Chapter 1722. A few seconds later, Dustless and Saber also landed on the ground. As for Wei Gong Qixi, he was also on his way here. Seeing that the Holy Grail War was about to end, Wei Gong Qixi naturally did not want the Holy Grail to be taken by someone else first. Therefore, this guy forced himself to endure the bleeding wound and slowly rushed over. The two of you sure know how to put on airs. The Hero King's body shimmered as he stared at Saber, who was hugging Dustless. Unable to vent his anger, he clenched his fists and roared, "Regardless of what happens today, 8th heroic spirit, you must die here for this king. Why does this fellow look like he ate gunpowder? Did someone offend him?" Saber frowned and looked up, only to see Archer's face as dark as a black pot. Who offended him? Of course it was. Dustless curled his lips and looked down on the petty Hero King. Even though he was known as the most ancient king, humanity's oldest super king, and looked down on all life like a god, the Hero King's attitude was truly unflattering. Upon seeing this scene, the Hero King's eyes widened. The suppressed flames in his heart could no longer remain dormant. Just as he was about to reprimand Dustless suddenly did something even more overboard. "Hero King, your attitude is as puny as a worm." Dustless mocked in an eccentric manner. He looked down on the so-called most ancient king. "It's not up to you to point fingers at me. Stay away from Saber. That belongs to the king." A scream that sounded like a pig being slaughtered resounded through the void. The Hero King was enraged as he nearly exploded. His face was burning red as veins protruded on his forehead. Gilgamesh seems a little off. Could it be that he has feelings for Saber? What a joke. Isn't this fellow a heroic spirit? Yen Feng Qili looked oddly at the Hero King before looking at Dustless and Saber. Suddenly, he came to a realization and could not help but pity the Hero King. He sighed and said, "This is just fancy dog abuse. By agitating Archer like this, you will completely offend him." Saber was at a loss whether to laugh or cry at Dustless's thoughts. It was as though the angrier the Hero King was, the happier he was. "Since we are mortal enemies, even if I don't agitate the Hero King, this bastard will still kill us all." This was the Holy Grail War. Only one saint would be enough. Everyone else could just die. This is called a psychological blow. Look at how the bastard, the Hero King, is stamping with rage. Who knows if that bastard will faint from the anger. When that happens, we can subdue him without a fight. Dustless laughed heartily as he ignored the Hero King's constipated expression. This guy, why is he so angry? Saber also noticed the odd expression on the Hero King's face. Immediately, she wore an odd expression. She could not figure out why this bastard was so angry. It felt like his wife had been snatched away by Dustless. "Since you wish to suffer this king's wrath so much, I'll grant you your wish." "Darn bastard!" The infuriated Hero King exploded. With a wave of his hand, the void was filled with countless golden beams of light. Immediately following that, countless divine weapons appeared. Shoo! 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 A dense barrage of attacks came pouring down as cold beams filled the void. Accompanied by the Hero King's rage, the number reached a level that left one in despair. "Ignorant fool, aren't you embarrassed to take out such a thing to embarrass yourself? Hurry up and pull out your EA. If you cause a huge commotion and I kill you, I'll be embarrassed." Raising his head to scan the various weapons floating above the Hero King's head, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He was unperturbed. Following that, he gently raised his right arm and flicked out a beam of light from his finger. Binding Dao's 81, space shattering. A transparent barrier instantly appeared. It was as thin as a cicada's wing, not even as thick as a fingernail. "You wish to use such a thing to resist this king's attack? Do you think I'm trash like Lancer and Berserker? This is blasphemy to this king. Bastard! The hero king bellowed angrily. He was pissed off by Dustless's pathetic look. He even felt nauseous as he felt uncomfortable all over. Who the hell needs your pity? Boom! Boom! The densely packed noble artifacts all crashed onto the enchantment. The continuous attacks were like a tidal wave, constantly destroying the seemingly weak enchantment that could not withstand a single blow from the sky-severing barrier. It won't shatter, right? Saber was rather nervous. Once the barrier was shattered, she and Dustless would probably be riddled with holes by the enraged hero king. Boom! 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 The barrage of attacks continued. There were more than 1,000 treasures that shot out from the Gate of Babylon, but what was shocking was that no matter how many attacks they launched, they failed to tear apart Dustless's space-shattering barrier. How boring. Didn't I say before that as long as you pull out your EA, the might will be enough to tear apart this barrier? Dustless's tone suddenly paused as he pointed at the golden treasures that littered the ground and advised, "It's best you pick up such fancy moves while it's still early." Did this darn bastard say that on purpose? The hero king was so angry that his hair stood on end. If Dustless had not said that, it would have been fine. There was nothing wrong with him taking out his EA, but now, if he were to take out his EA according to Dustless's wishes, his reputation as the hero king would be completely ruined. Do you think I'll take it out just because you say so? You aren't worthy. The hero king cupped his fists and snorted coldly. He waved his hand once again as the golden light above his head shot out a large number of weapons once again. With a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas, they came crashing down on Dustless and Saber. You don't appreciate my kind advice at all. Dustless could not help but shake his head when he saw the situation. He leisurely snapped his fingers and with a tpa sound, large ripples appeared in the void. It was as though they had suddenly appeared around the sun. The blinding light was scorching and blinding. Of course, Gilgamesh's face turned green. Chapter 1723. There was only one user of the King's Babylon, in the past, hero King Gilgamesh. But now, things were different. There was a brand new user, and his proficiency and control was something even the original user, the hero king, could not match. After all, Dustless had been using the King's Babylon for centuries. In terms of time, it far exceeded the hero king's, so it was reasonable for his attainment to be above his. Hum. 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 Above Dustless's head, a resplendent beam of light with a domineering aura flashed. It was roughly the same as the golden beam above the hero king's head. They were suffused with an ancient and desolate aura. Today, I'll finish you off completely, you imposter. Dustless's thin arm waved gently as all sorts of enviable treasures surged out. Without exception, they were all peerless divine artifacts. Darn bastard, you are clearly the imposter, yet you are slandering me. The hero king flew into a rage when he heard this. He was the most ancient king. Back when there was only one world, one person had once obtained all the treasures in the world. Everything in the world belonged to this king. He was the hero king of ancient Uruk, Gilgamesh. Now, as the true hero king, Gilgamesh felt aggrieved when Dustless accused him of being an imposter. These two bastards, Saber was abnormally speechless. The hero king had a large number of treasures above his head, and so did Dustless. There were all sorts of treasures that left people dazzled, envious, and hateful. Ignoring others, even Saber herself felt jealous. Dustless and the hero king could even take out the original form of Excalibur. The one who suffered the greatest blow from this clash was not the hero king, but Saber. Watching the two tycoons battle and seeing them take out all sorts of legendary treasures made her feel sad. Crush him. Disappear, you eyesore of gold. Dustless and the Hero King waved their hands at the same time as the large number of treasures gathered on their foreheads shot out without leaving a single one behind. Boom! 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 High up in the sky, hundreds of treasures began to clash. The scene was spectacular as resplendent sparks flashed incessantly. Both sides destroyed each other's treasures as the ground was filled with metal debris. What kind of joke is this? Why would I lose to such an impostor? The Hero King stared intently at the debris on the ground as he looked at the indifferent Dustless. He revealed a look of shock. Shoo! Shoo! Their treasured artifacts continued clashing, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Dustless was superior. Compared to the Hero King who was aimlessly venting the flames in his heart, Dustless's usage was much more ingenious. Shoo shoo! The treasure artifact that the Hero King shot out from the king's treasure was once again shattered by the treasure artifact under Dustless's control, reducing it to metal scraps that filled the ground. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Shoo! No one would be able to accept losing to a person he hated the most in a domain he was best at. It was absolutely intolerable, much less the Hero King who thought highly of himself. Heavenlock! Shoo! 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 A strange-looking chain drilled out of the void as it dodged the oncoming treasures. Like a venomous snake, it went straight for Dustless. If you are caught by Heavenlock, you are definitely dead. The Hero King's blood-red eyes churned with bloodlust as his face suffused a ruthless and ferocious look. He made up his mind that the moment he captured Wuchen, he would immediately brandish his saber to finish off the eyesore. Shoo! 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 Is this guy going easy on me? Does he think I'm not his match? Not only did the Hero King not rejoice when he saw this, his eyebrows pricked up as he wondered, is this guy doing this on purpose? Is he looking down on me? Compared to EA, I actually trust Heavenlock more. Caw caw caw. Just as he planned on continuing his verbal assault on Dustless, the Hero King was smacked in the face. He felt a burning pain as a crack appeared in the heavenly lock that could not be unlocked. Even the god of Heavenlock can't break free. Don't be so full of yourself. No matter what kind of attack it is, it has a limit. If it exceeds that limit, then any wonderful move will collapse on its own. The heavenly lock actually shattered. How is this possible? The heavenly lock is used as a divine rule. The higher the divinity of the captive, the harder the chain will be, and the harder it will be to break free. The Hero King's face was ashen as though he had eaten a fly. It was extremely cheap and fascinating. No matter how much he thought about it, he never imagined that Dustless would be able to shatter the Heavenlock so easily. The process was as simple and easy as eating and drinking. Chapter 1724. It was no wonder the Hero King would reveal such a bitter expression. To him, the heavenly lock had always been successful. Ordinary people could only dream of escaping the heavenly lock's shackles, much less destroy it. But now, Dustless had done it. And it was so simple. Unforgivable, the Hero King was enraged as he locked his gaze onto Dustless. His blood-red eyes protruded outwards, giving off a feeling of horror that was about to burst out of his eye sockets. You don't seem to have heard what I said before. Sweeping a glance at the Hero King who was about to go berserk, Dustless knew that what he had said before was nonsense. It was best to continue fighting. Whoosh! 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 His body transformed into a formless beam of light as he instantly appeared in front of the Hero King. Heavenly gathering cloud sword. Light swirled in his hand as a divine sword that could slice through metal like mud flashed. What fast speed! Turning his head, the Hero King was alarmed. Although he was unable to capture Dustless's speed, and he did not even have the time to react, his natural sense of danger and intuition had sensed the impending danger. Shoo! 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 Without a second thought, the Hero King dodged and retreated. Too slow. Dustless shot forward with his sword in hand. Like a shadow, he appeared in front of the Hero King in a split second. Under the latter's horrified gaze, the heavenly gathering cloud sword swept out. Poochie! Blood splattered out of the void as a glaring mark appeared on the Hero King's gorgeous armor. The defensive armor was pulverized, and one could see the skin that had been sliced apart. How dare you, shoo! 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 However, Dustless did not give the Hero King a chance to speak any more nonsense. The glint fruit's powers were activated once again as a straight beam of light stopped above the Hero King's forehead. No good. Seeing the flash above his head, the Hero King's pupils constricted. The space behind him produced a ripple once again as the sharp gemstone sword was unsheathed. Shoo! 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 The Hero King had an abnormally ferocious expression as he slashed at Dustless's waist. His strength was raised to the limits of his life. From the looks of it, he planned on slicing Dustless in half. Naive. Dustless's dry lips curled into a contemptuous smile. His pupils spun as his eye powers blasted out. Immediately following that, the corners of his mouth opened slightly as he spat out two simple words. Immediately, he resolved the Hero King's fatal attack. Divine Might. A slight ripple of energy appeared in the sky, and a tiny vortex appeared. Dustless's abdomen throbbed inexplicably, and in an instant, it lost its substance. Poochie! The broadsword's beam penetrated Dustless's body. The Hero King was overjoyed as he stared at the wound in anticipation. He thought that it would be a beautiful scene of him being sliced in half. To everyone's surprise, the sensation that came from his hand left the Hero King in a daze. He had clearly struck Dustless's body, but the feeling he got was like a sword sweeping across invisible air. It was completely useless. Dustless's body seemed to suddenly turn incorporeal as he vanished without a trace. Lightspeed kick. Taking advantage of the Hero King's moment of carelessness, Dustless's tiny foot, which was covered in light, struck him with all its might. Boom! 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 A flaming mushroom cloud rose from the Hero King's body as he was sent flying hundreds of meters away by Dustless's kick. His shining armor lost its luster as it was charred black. Not only that, certain parts of his body could not withstand the force of the explosion as they caved in. Aw, 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 a roar that caused one's body to tremble rang out. Those who were touched by the sound wave all retreated, their hearts trembling in fear from that furious roar. Kill you. I have to kill you. I have to tear you to pieces. A neurotic and sharp roar came out of the Hero King's throat. On a closer look, his body was severely charred. His head of golden hair had been ignited by Dustless's lightspeed kick, burning him to a crisp. Since you want to die so much, I'll grant you your wish. The Hero King was completely enraged. The space around his right hand produced a ripple as a golden circle appeared. Following that, a strange-looking spiral weapon slowly emerged. Is it EA? Finally decided to get serious. Dustless nodded slightly when he saw the situation. Following that, a teasing and playful look flashed across his face. Focusing on the Hero King who was about to go berserk, Dustless suddenly shouted, Heavenlock. Shoo! 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 In the void, a series of massive chains shot out as they wantonly danced. This time, the user of the Heavenlock and the target of the attack had changed. The person who cast the spell had become Dustless, while the target of the attack had become the Hero King. It was the exact opposite of the previous outcome. "Scram, you hateful thing!" The Hero King roared as a large number of treasures shot out from the void behind him, destroying the heavenlock that was attacking him. "Fool!" Dustless laughed sinisterly in his heart as his gaze landed on the Hero King's feet. Caw caw caw. The ground beneath his feet suddenly exploded. The Hero King, who realized the danger, retreated in a flash, but it was too late. The golden chains that had been prepared for a long time instantly captured him. The Hero King stared intently at the chains that wrapped around him. This was the first time in his life that he had a look of despair. He said helplessly, "It's actually the Heavenlock. I'm screwed." As the owner of the Heavenlock, the Hero King naturally knew how terrifying the Heavenlock was. To ordinary humans, the Heavenlock was just a sturdy chain without anything special. But if the target was a god, the problem would be terrible. The Heavenlock was a weapon against gods. To put it simply, it was meant to punish gods. It was of little use against mortals. And the Hero King happened to possess 2/3 of the divine spark, so the threat the Heavenlock posed to him was absolutely fatal. Chapter 1725. Although the Hero King was powerful, he was similarly helpless against his own noble artifact. All he could do was stare helplessly at the glaring chains. Suddenly, he found the Heavenlock extremely disgusting. The Hero King could not help but feel nauseous as he vomited. "Hero King, although you are powerful, you do not have any immunity against your own noble artifact, right? Especially as a demigod, it's impossible for you to resist the Heavenlock." Dustless chuckled in Schadenfreude. The uniqueness of the Heavenlock lay in this. To gods, it was extremely lethal, but to ordinary humans, it was just an ordinary chain. And the Hero King happened to have 2/3 of the divine spark, hence, the Heavenlock's restraint on him was multiplied. Damn it! Damn it! The Hero King was like a hooligan as he cursed incessantly. Looking at the chains that were tightly wrapped around his left arm, he suddenly felt a sense of mockery. His face turned purple from anger. The Hero King never dreamed that he would fall at the hands of Heaven's shackles. Heaven's shackles were often used by the Hero King to punish others, but he never expected that Dustless would use Heaven's shackles to punish him. How dare he! Then I'll use the EA to tear you apart. After struggling with all his might, the Hero King helplessly realized that he had no way of escaping the Heavenlock. It was as though he had met his nemesis. The greater his strength, the harder the Heavenlock became. "You plan on using the parting sword, DA, to tear me apart? Are you sure you can do it? Also..." A deep smile flashed across Dustless's face. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a strange sword that looked identical to the parting sword, DA, in the Hero King's hand appeared in Dustless's palm. "This fellow can also use the parting sword, DA." The Hero King's arrogant eyes flashed a look of caution. He knew the strength of his noble artifact like the back of his hand. If he was unlucky, he might really be reduced to ashes by the terrifying power of the parting sword, DA. After all, the parting sword, DA, was known as a sword that could destroy the world. Saber. Suddenly, Dustless looked at the distant saber and reminded her, "Instead of watching me battle with this shiny gold, why don't you take the opportunity to snatch the sacred grail?" After being reminded by Dustless, Saber, who had been watching the battle, came back to her senses. The scene of Dustless crushing gold sparkly was so satisfying that Saber was momentarily dazed. Seeing Golden Twinkle being brutally beaten up by Dustless, especially being burned to a crisp by Dustless, with his hair charred, turning the Hero King into a bald head, Saber felt a sense of relief. Even Yen Feng, Chi, was looked down upon beyond the clouds. "Is it that funny? I hope the two of you can still laugh later." The Hero King's cold gaze swept back and forth. It was as bone-piercing as an icy blade. Anyone who met his tyrannical gaze would feel a prickling pain and discomfort on their skin. Have a taste of my wrath. An arrogant smile suffused the hero king's face as he caressed, obedient parting sword, yea. He stared at Dustless in a cool and awesome manner. Instantly, he found immense confidence. Caw caw caw. The obedient parting sword began spinning rapidly as a red spiral halo burst out. The relatively calm sky immediately stirred with a biting cold wind. Not only that, the void began to crack visibly. Then, let's see who's stronger. Dustless smiled faintly when he saw this. The obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand began spinning rapidly as an extremely destructive and sharp wind wave blasted out. Enuma Elish. The hero king, who was the first to lose his cool, launched an attack as a dense energy ripple surged over. The surrounding void was instantly obliterated. Ha ha, hero king. You shout with such grandeur. You don't look too bad on the surface. Dustless chuckled as he looked at the incoming red vortex. Space began to slowly disintegrate. Dustless threw out, obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand. Annihilate him, AA. Compared to the sonorous and valiant hero king, Dustless's tone was a lot more ordinary. Boom. 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 The two violent energy ripples collided, causing the void to tremble violently. The two forces that were in a stalemate struggled against each other, and the violent impact that erupted shattered the surrounding space. That's all there is to it. Looking at the deadlocked energy ripples, the hero king suddenly laughed happily. He had always been crushed by Dustless. Even a genuine hero king like him had been called a fake. Now, he had finally regained some of his confidence. No, you've lost. Gently lifting his eyelids to glance at the hero king, Dustless's mind stirred slightly as Celestial Lock pulled the hero king over. He approached the area where the two obedient parting swords were clashing. Poochie. 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 Under the influence of the powerful energy ripples, the hero king's body began to gradually collapse. This bastard plans on using the shockwaves from the obedient parting sword, EA, to finish me off. How can I let you do as you wish? The hero king clenched his teeth as he understood Dustless's true intentions. He took the initiative to distance himself from the massive energy ripples. Just the powerful energy ripples from the clash of the two obedient parting swords, EA, was enough to vanquish the hero king. And at that moment, a jaw-dropping turn of events happened. It disrupted the ending that was about to come to an end. Saber, I'm now using a command curse to order you to immediately give up your plans on the Holy Grail. Begin attacking that man, Dustless. Join forces with Archer to finish him off. The sudden order froze the scene as everyone stared in shock at the panting figure. Kisi, are you sick? Why would you give such a stupid order? Seeing that the Holy Grail was about to be hers, Saber's limbs immediately lost control. With her sword in hand, she turned around and slowly walked towards Dustless. Sorry Saber, there's only one Holy Grail, and it only has one owner, Wei Gong Kisi. So it's best you join forces with the hero king to kill Dustless. Chapter 1726. This guy is really vicious. Dustless stared deeply at Wei Gong Kisi. He did not expect him to be so shameless. Wei Gong Kisi, you ungrateful thing. Don't you know who helped you obtain the Holy Grail? Now you want to kill the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. You are really despicable. Without waiting for Dustless to speak, Saber angrily reprimanded loudly, you want me and Dustless to kill each other so that no one can stop you from obtaining the Holy Grail. Is this your goal? As Wei Gong Kisi used the power of the command curse, Saber could not resist at all. Her body uncontrollably walked towards Dustless. You are too naive, Saber. The Hero King glanced at Saber and said indifferently, in the so-called Holy Grail War, there is only one true saint. This person is definitely not one of us heroic spirits. That's right. The so-called heroic spirits are just tools used to kill. Wei Gong Qixi added without any guilt. Come and fulfill my wish. Holy Grail. Wei Gong Qixi's eyes turned fanatical as he stared at the liquid overflowing from the Holy Grail. Wei Gong Qixi. You want to obtain the Holy Grail? I will definitely not allow it. You better *CK off. I need to use the Holy Grail to solve my doubts. Yan Feng Qixi stared at Wei Gong Qixi unkindly. He stood in front of him like a wall. His hands were clenched tightly as he got into an attacking stance. Ha! You are dustless, right? Fate is really cruel. Looking at Dustless's calm face, the Hero King laughed maniacally. Things in this world are just so bizarre. A second ago, we were allies who treated each other with sincerity. Now, we are enemies. Sorry, Dustless. My body is out of control. Saber was sweating profusely. Her body could not resist the command of Wei Gong Qixi's command curse. There is no need to apologize. The final outcome between heroic spirits is always like this, killing. Dustless did not mind. After all, there was only one owner of the Holy Grail. Your inexplicable confidence is really annoying. The Hero King raised his voice as he looked at Dustless with extreme displeasure. Alright, I might as well admit that you are very strong. You are so strong that I can't deal with you alone. However, with two kings attacking simultaneously, I do not understand what gives you the confidence to deal with us. No, Gilgamesh. From the beginning to the end, I only have one enemy. The so-called two kings besieging me is just your wishful thinking. Dustless shook his finger. Do you think Saber is on the same side as you? Don't be naive. The Hero King curled his lips and said with a sneer, just now, Saber's master used the command hex to give the command. You must have heard the content very clearly, destroy Dustless. Idiot. Upon seeing this, Dustless revealed a hopeless expression. Noticing that he could not communicate with the Hero King normally, he immediately took action. Swish. Swish. The golden flash swept out and pounced straight at Gilgamesh. Quickly leave, Dustless. Saber warned him loudly. She was filled with hatred for Wei Gong Qixi. Dustless had helped her numerous times, and if not for Dustless contributing his soul to raise her demonic powers, Saber might have already vanished. Looking up, he saw Saber raise Excalibur. Furthermore, it was covered in a large amount of destructive golden light. An extremely oppressive and powerful slash enveloped Dustless. Swish. Swish. However, Dustless, who had transformed into a flash of light, ignored it. He continued charging straight for the Hero King. Boom. 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 Even though Saber did not wish to use her slash, due to the command hex's command, a massive beam of light swept out. It was about to swallow Dustless whole. Boom. 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 The golden slash tore through the thistles and thorns as it headed straight for Dustless to devour. A good opportunity. Upon seeing this, the Hero King's eyes lit up. The obedient parting sword in his hand began spinning at high speeds once again. A red vortex of energy ripples burst out. What a miracle! The Hero King and the Night King, these two archenemies, actually joined forces one day. Dustless could not help but find it laughable. As everyone knew, Saber and Archer were archenemies. The two of them could be said to be natural enemies. The two of them had fought fiercely during the two Holy Grail Wars. Now, they had actually joined forces to deal with him. Dustless felt that the world was unpredictable. Both of you are famous figures in history. Then, let me be a little more serious. With his gaze focused, large amounts of chakra erupted from Dustless's body as it gathered and circulated around his body. A super monster formed completely from energy suddenly appeared. Ao. It was a monster formed from the energy in Dustless's body, but it had reached a shocking level. Under Dustless's control, it was as though it had been given life as it let out an earth-shattering roar. The deafening roar caused one's soul to tremble. Layer after layer of chakra broke out of his body and quickly fused with it. Gradually, it turned into a huge figure. It was an exaggerated monster formed completely from energy. It was like a shark that had emerged from the water, revealing its ferocious appearance. It was wearing a simple armor with a ferocious Tengu armor on its head. Its extremely evil eyes were like the embodiment of a nightmare. It emitted a powerful force that made one's heart palpitate. Its huge body was extraordinarily mighty and filled with explosive power. Not to mention a complete Kansusanu, even if it was a bug that was dozens of meters long, it would definitely cause a ruckus. Chapter 1727. What is that strange thing? The Hero King's eyes widened as his eyes darted around in shock. Buzz, a golden light covered the sky as the entire world was bathed in golden light. Looking up, a super behemoth suddenly appeared. Its exaggerated height of 100 meters left the Hero King dumbfounded. This is Dustless's true face. Sensing the ancient aura exuding from the prehistoric giant, Saber muttered to herself in a daze. Even if Wei Gong Qixi used command curse to order me and Archer to join forces, it doesn't seem like we can defeat Dustless. If that's the case, I have a clear conscience. Sensing the invincible aura of the giant that could annihilate the world, Saber wasn't disappointed or sad. Instead, she revealed a charming smile. As a knight, she abided by the ideals of knights. Dustless had done her a favor, but because of Wei Gong Qixi's orders, she had no choice but to draw her sword against Dustless. This made her feel guilty. Now that Dustless had the strength to deal with her and Archer, Saber was truly happy. Shoo! 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 At the same time, the massive golden light slammed into Kansusanu's retreating body, instantly devouring its massive leg. Boom! 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 An intense explosion suddenly spread out. Kansusanu's massive body only trembled slightly before remaining motionless. When the smoke dissipated, Kansusanu didn't even have a single wound left on it. Gulp! Seeing this scene, Saber choked in disbelief. The sharpness of Excalibur was self-evident. She knew it very well, but now that she had attacked the monster with all her might, it didn't even leave a scratch. This truly refreshed Saber's understanding. Darn pervert. The Hero King was also dumbfounded when he saw this, as he could not help but curse. Many years ago, I was already in a different dimension from the both of you. Inside the golden complete Kansusanu, Dustless looked down at the two people on the ground expressionlessly. Finally, Kansusanu's Tachi of light was unsheathed. Clang! 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 The huge blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone brightly in the sky. It was as terrifying as a guillotine. Of course, the target of this guillotine was not one or two people. It was the entire Eastern Mu world. Hero King. Now do you understand what I meant by my previous words? In front of the complete Kansusanu, all moves are weak. Under the control of his mind, Kansusanu perfect form lifted the Tachi of light. Bastard, give me my holy grail. Kansusanu's perfect form's descent also shocked Wei Gong Qixi and Yen Feng Qili, especially when they saw Kansusanu's 100-meter tall super figure. Wei Gong Qixi's heart was filled with despair. F***ck, even if the two kings joined forces, they would not be a match for this monster. You want me to give you the Holy Grail? Dream on. No. You should just die, you despicable Wei Gong Qi. Yen Feng Qi Li sneered coldly. In his opinion, Wei Gong Qi was a hypocrite. He was clearly an evil wolf, so why was he pretending to be kind? He even had delusions of becoming a righteous partner. What a joke. Don't even think of stopping me from obtaining the Holy Grail. Without any hesitation, he pounced towards Wei Gong Qi. It was impossible for him to hand over the Holy Grail. There was no room for negotiation. Yen Feng Qi also had endless doubts, hoping to get the answer from the Holy Grail. Gulp. The hero king stared at the super-huge sword in the sky with his mouth agape. He could not hide the fear in his heart as his body began to retreat uncontrollably. What kind of joke is this? It's just a scam. There's no way I'm afraid. The hero king's face flushed red with anger. At the same time, a bright light flashed behind him. An ancient flying device inlaid with gorgeous gems flew out from the Gate of Babylon. His handsome face was filled with indescribable determination. He decisively jumped onto the gorgeous flying device. From the looks of it, he wanted to fight to the death with Dustless to settle the matter. Fool who doesn't know his limits. Seeing the hero king soar into the sky without any fear, Dustless could not help but shake his head. He gently swung the perfect form Kansusanu's saber out. Shoo! 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 The massive saber blade immediately stood out as it charged straight at the hero king, who was like a king of the sky. So powerful. The hero king's eyes could not help but twitch. Even though the saber wind had yet to approach his body, he could not help but catch a glimpse of the shadow of death. To this day, Dustless's Kansusanu had already reached the pinnacle of perfection, shocking the world. Caw caw caw. The perfect form Kansusanu's might was too immense. The flying device that the hero king was controlling seemed to have lost its effectiveness. It began to wander around uncontrollably, as though it could tilt and be destroyed at any moment. Don't underestimate me. The hero king, who was feeling pissed, exploded. Obedient Parting Sword, DA, once again unleashed an extremely destructive attack. He stared at the incoming saber wind and used all his strength to shoot out the edge. Enuma, Elish. Two powerful moves, in a situation where there was no one to stop them, inevitably collided. A superstorm that wanted to destroy the world spread out. Excalibur, at the same time, Saber, who was under the control of the command curse, also launched a lethal attack at Dustless. The combined attack of Saber and the hero king was surprisingly powerful. However, as for Saber's attack, it was completely ignored by Dustless. It was not that he looked down on her, but with his present strength, the chances of him cracking the strengthened perfect form Kansusanu was 0. Therefore, Dustless naturally had nothing to worry about. Chapter 1728. Boom. 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 Saber's Excalibur struck Kansusanu's perfect form, immediately producing large amounts of smoke and dust. Blazing flames soared into the sky. So. A cold wind blew from the rift, revealing the perfect form Kansusanu's quaint and unscathed body. What a detestable evildoer. At the very least, he should have gone easy on me. At least we can be considered acquaintances. Saber gave a wry smile as he made a rare joke to amuse himself. He had been dealt a blow by the perfect form Kansusanu's indestructible defense. At the same time, the saber wind produced by the perfect form Kansusanu and the sharpness of Obedient Parting Sword, EA, made close contact. Boom! 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 The void immediately trembled as a chaotic rift spread out. It devoured the void and dismembered the world, presenting a tragic scene of doomsday. TCH, this big guy may be scary, but that's only on the surface. The Hero King, who was riding on a pearlescent jewel aircraft, regained some of his shattered confidence. This time, he was not at a disadvantage in the clash between the perfect form Kansusanu and Obedient Parting Sword, EA. Are you that happy to be able to block my attack? You even forgot your identity and laughed heartily. Dustless, who was inside the perfect form Kansusanu, looked calmly at the Hero King. Following that, the perfect form Kansusanu brandished his greatsword once again. How can a mortal like you understand this king's feelings? This is obviously something to be happy about. Without even thinking, the Hero King answered decisively. Up to this point in the battle, he had been crushed by Dustless. Now, he had finally turned the tables. Although it was a draw, the Hero King had regained a lot of his confidence. He was grinning from ear to ear. Seeing Dustless's perfect form Kansusanu preparing to attack once again, the Hero King did not want to fall behind. He raised Obedient Parting Sword, EA, in his hand as well. Immortal Technique, Dustless's perfect Kansusanu's aura became dull. Originally, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan was a very evil type, and Kansusanu gave off a very sinister and gloomy feeling. But this time, with the integration of the Senjutsu, the unique temperament suddenly changed. The complete form Kansusanu's enormous body was right in front of his eyes, yet it felt like it was far away from him. It felt like it had blended into nature, as if it had become one with nature. Immortal Technique, Kansusanu. With Dustless's words, the perfect Kansusanu's physique was enhanced once again. Under the Hero King's incredulous gaze, it grew another 10 to 20 meters. This is too ridiculous. The Hero King's lips trembled as he witnessed the enlarged perfect Kansusanu. Immediately, he felt insulted. Dustless's perfect Kansusanu from before was not at its peak. This meant that he had deliberately gone easy on him and was looking down on him. Darn thing. The enraged Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. The Obedient Parting Sword, EA, in his hand once again pulsed with a red vortex as it gradually enlarged. Enuma, Elish. Accompanied by the Hero King's rage, a powerful attack came straight at him. It was about to devour the perfect Kansusanu. What a boring trick. Upon seeing this, Dustless shook his head slightly. Immortal Technique, Kansusanu, immediately waved his hand nonchalantly. Boom! 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 A golden saber wind that was several times more terrifying than before flashed. Its might and speed were several times more powerful than before. In an instant, it tore apart the Hero King's trusted attack. Pucci! The dark red energy vortexes, which were getting bigger and bigger, were instantly destroyed. It was as simple as tearing a piece of paper. They were annihilated in the blink of an eye. Cracks that were more than 10 meters deep appeared on the ground. It was extremely terrifying. The shockwaves that spread out in all directions even crushed the surrounding mountains into powder. Pucci! It was the same for the Hero King himself. His entire body had been penetrated by the saber wind of Kansusanu. His body had an additional shocking crack and gap. His entire body had nearly been split into two. I'm really sorry. I did not mean to put you in this state. It's just that I was displeased with your petty victory, so I used a little more strength. After dispelling Immortal Technique, Kansusanu, Dustless's body landed on the ground. He looked apologetically at the Hero King. This bastard's organs had been completely destroyed. His death was only a matter of time. Shoo! 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 However, the furious strike of Immortal Technique, Kansusanu, did not stop there. It continued pressing forward and with an unstoppable speed, it blasted towards the Holy Grail that Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qixi were fighting over. Boom! 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 An earth-shattering explosion swept out as the exquisite Holy Grail was pulverized by Kansusanu's saber wind. Not even a residue was left behind. The disgusting liquid contained in the Holy Grail, the evil of this world, also spread out. Indeed, it's easy for a person to do stupid things when angered. Upon seeing this, Dustless smacked his head as he felt a headache coming on. His mind had indeed been thrown into chaos by the Hero King's arrogant tone. He had deliberately suppressed the power of Kansusanu, but such a thing had still happened. No, this isn't my fault. It can only be said that this place is too small. After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly shook his head and pushed all his faults to the back of his mind. This ending isn't bad either. Lying on the ground, the Hero King's eyes were turbid. His dying tone was filled with schadenfreude. His abdomen had already been penetrated by Dustless. It was completely over. I'm sorry, Saber. Turning his head to look at Saber, Dustless realized that her body was gradually dissipating. She was about to vanish, but there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the Holy Grail had been destroyed. Chapter 1729. The Holy Grail was destroyed, and the dark red liquid that it contained, the evil of this world, invaded the land wantonly, rapidly expanding its territory and occupying the entire land in an instant. The dead Hero King and company were instantly covered by the black mud. Apologize. I should be the one apologizing. Saber shook her head and said awkwardly, I didn't choose the right master this time. I didn't expect to leave you with so much trouble in the end. Be it Wei Gong Qixi or Yen Feng Qili, I don't wish for them to obtain the Holy Grail. Your actions are exactly what I want. Then your wish should wait for the next Holy Grail war. I will use the Holy Relic to summon you. Dustless's mouth twitched. He originally wanted to say that the so-called Holy Grail War was just a trick to fool people. But after thinking about it, he decided against it. After being defeated by Wei Gong Qixi, if he were to tell Saber the truth of the Holy Grail War, she might just give up on herself. Following that, Saber's body turned into starlight and disappeared with the wind. Damn it, damn it, damn it. It's all your fault, you idiot. Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qixi pointed at each other's noses and cursed. Both of them coveted the Holy Grail, and now that it was destroyed by Dustless in one move, they pushed the blame to each other. The two of you, an indifferent voice spread out. Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qixi, who heard the voice, could not help but shudder. Dustless. Seeing Dustless's figure, Wei Gong Qixi and Yen Feng Qili were stunned. The Holy Grail has disappeared, but why are you still alive? This doesn't make sense. Sense. That thing is worthless. I continue to exist because my way of existence is above the Holy Grail. Don't compare me with other heroic spirits. Dustless snorted and looked down on such a rigid concept. Common sense was only effective on ordinary people. Cough, cough, cough. Everything is over, then. Dustless cleared his throat and looked at Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qixi. The Fourth Holy Grail War has ended. Then, for world peace, can the two of you die as well? For world peace. You bastard, how dare you say such things? Hearing this, Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qixi were both angry and amused. Looking at the huge crack on the ground that was about to be split into two, they cursed Dustless's shamelessness in their hearts. It was all because of Kansusanu. This bastard almost destroyed Dongmu City, and now he's saying that I'm a threat to world peace. Wei Gong Qixi and Yen Feng Qili's faces darkened as they cursed Dustless thousands of times. Bang! Wei Gong Qixi clearly did not want to die, so he turned around and launched a sneak attack on Dustless. Bang bang bang. Dustless's head was like a water droplet, splattering in all directions. However, before Wei Gong Che could rejoice, the wound gradually healed. I wanted to be merciful and give you a quick death. Since you like to die so much, I'll torture you to death slowly. Dustless's scarlet eyes fell on Wei Gong Che's head as he shouted, Tens Ho. A pitch-black flame appeared out of thin air and landed on Wei Gong Che's head without any warning. Ah! Kill me if you dare. Wei Gong Chi was rolling on the ground, screaming miserably. His words were filled with endless hatred, but Wu Chen didn't pay attention to him. He just walked lazily to Yan Feng Chili, who was in a daze. As for you, staring at Yan Feng Chili's lifeless eyes, Dustless said, You're luckier than Wei Gong Che. After all, you're still useful. If you're lucky, you might be able to survive. Lucky. Yan Feng Chili looked at Dustless blankly. Seeing his playful eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. He still hoped that Dustless would give him a quick death. Gulp. The disgusting dark red liquid, the evil of this world, spread out and bubbled like boiling water. It even had visible boiling steam. Fire release, great fireball technique. A huge fireball came out of Dustless's mouth and surged into the evil of this world. It was instantly swallowed, and then a scene that made Yan Feng Chili break down appeared. Boom boom boom. A huge fire rose up and ignited the evil of this world that was slowly moving on the ground. The temperature rose rapidly and the area within a few kilometers turned into a sea of fire in the blink of an eye. You're so evil. You want to burn me alive. You said that I could survive if I was lucky. Lucky my ass. Yan Feng Chili was so angry at Dustless that he couldn't speak properly. He had never been good at talking, but now he was cursing. It was enough to show how frustrated he was. It wasn't that Yan Feng Chili was afraid of death, but he still didn't fully understand the meaning of life. He was just unwilling to die now. You can't say that. Although the chances of survival are slim, it's still better than Wei Gong Chili. Pointing at Wei Gong Chili, who was still struggling in the Amaterasu, Dustless smiled innocently. You're lucky to be burned to death in an instant. Look at the unlucky Wei Gong Chili. I purposely lowered the power of the Amaterasu to the minimum and burned this ungrateful bastard to death bit by bit. Compared to him, Yan Feng Chili, you're so lucky. Lucky? Hearing Wu Chen's bizarre theory, Yan Feng Chili wished he could give him a slap. This fellow looked rather sunny on the surface, but he was extremely sinister and ruthless behind his back. Yan Feng Chili felt that the term smiling tiger was too apt to describe Dustless. On one hand, he could communicate with you in a friendly manner, but on the other hand, he could torture you to death in the most painful way. He was hypocritical and fake. Please don't die. After glancing at Yan Feng and Chili, Dustless strutted away. A Holy Grail war would take about 60 years. However, because the Holy Grail was destroyed this time, the magic power was not released. The next Holy Grail war would only take 10 years. Chapter 1730. That despicable eighth heroic spirit. Yan Feng Chili was going crazy as he looked at the sea of fire around him. It seemed like there was no way to escape. The fire around him was so thick that it seemed like he could not escape unscathed. It was as difficult as defeating Dustless. That guy is so shameless as a heroic spirit. I have never seen such a despicable heroic spirit. He is worse than a hooligan and a scumbag. Yan Feng Chili was furious. Dustless gave him an extremely bad impression. On one hand, he could kill people mercilessly. On the other hand, he had such disgusting words like peaceful and kind on his lips. Just thinking about it made Yan Feng Chili want to vomit. Let's think of a way to escape from this damned place first. Yen Feng Chi Li's sharp eyes looked around. He ignored Takamiya Ji-shi, who was still rolling in the sea of fire. He was like a headless fly, wandering around aimlessly, looking for the light of dawn, the exit of the sea of fire. It hurts. I'm so thirsty. Strange. What is going on? In the ocean of fire that was several kilometers in size, the boy's feeble moans suddenly echoed. His face was dark, and his bright eyes had lost their luster and beauty. His body collapsed to the ground, and he raised his head to look at the sky. His eyes were blank and dim. Why is there suddenly fire? The boy, who was only a few years old, muttered unconsciously. He had short red hair, and his cheeks were cute. His lifeless eyes were filled with dirt as he stared blankly into the void. No one knew what he was thinking. This person was the future Takamiya Shiro. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The previous battle had destroyed the Ahrensburg family's castle, but Dustless used a large number of shadow clones to repair it. After all, this was his only residence. If he left, he would have to sleep on the streets. This is strange. Since the Holy Grail War is over, why are you still alive? Did you use the power of the Holy Grail to regain your body? Inside the castle that Dustless had just repaired, Rin Enbin grabbed his clothes and asked. Little brat, go away. I don't have time to deal with you. Dustless saw this and waved his hand impatiently, indicating for Rin Enbin to stand aside. He still had important things to do, so he didn't have time to play with this little witch. Ling, come over here. Don't get in the way of Mr. Dustless. You're the heir of the House of Inaka, so you have to pay attention to your manners. Kuei Inaka smiled and waved her hand. She scratched Ling's nose and motioned for Ling not to cause trouble. He glanced at Dustless a few times. Although he couldn't figure out what Dustless was trying to do, his serious expression and the special way he was forming seals seemed to indicate that he was preparing for some kind of move. Phew. Fortunately, my eye power and the amount of chakra I have is unprecedented. Otherwise, I would have been exhausted to death sooner or later. But then again, although this technique consumes a lot of energy, it's undeniably very convenient. At this moment, Dustless's left eye has turned into Rinnegan Sharingan. And in front of him was a large pile of glittering golden fragments. To be exact, they were actually fragments of the Holy Grail. In fact, these were all transformed from Alice Phil's body. Dustless's current mission was to revive Alice Phil. To be more precise, it was to restore the Holy Grail. Outer Path, Rinnegan Technique. Alice Phil was the vessel of the Holy Grail. From the moment she was killed, she became the carrier of the Holy Grail, used to carry the souls of the heroic spirits. And these fragments of the Holy Grail, in a sense, were Alice Phil's corpse. Buzz buzz buzz, the light of the emerald shrouded the fragments of the Holy Grail. Then, an incredible scene happened. These so-called fragments actually glowed with an indescribable magical power, as if they were endowed with spirituality. They began to understand on their own and began to self-assemble. In just a dozen seconds, all the fragments were gathered and finally turned into a brand new exquisite Holy Grail. Then, under the dumbfounded gaze of Ling and Kuei Inaka, a bright light flashed across the surface of the golden Holy Grail. Then, it slowly turned into a graceful human body. Taking a closer look, it was the dead Alice Phil. Are you kidding me? How can you do such a thing? I heard from Saber that Wei Gong Kisi is dead. Kuai and Ling exclaimed in shock. Their high-spirited tone was even a little sharp. Their eyes were wide open as they stared at Dustless. They stared at him motionlessly. They had already understood what this guy wanted to do. Their breathing immediately became several times heavier. Both of you, lower your voices. I can't concentrate. Dustless's forehead was covered in sweat. The burden of reviving Alice Phil this time was greater than he had imagined. Hum, hum, hum. About 10 seconds later, Sleeping Beauty suddenly opened her eyes. Her mouth let out an unconscious murmur, the kind of soft sound that one would make when they were asleep. It was abnormally vague and very subtle. Didn't I die? About 10 seconds later, Alice Phil's familiar voice drifted into Dustless's ears. Although it sounds a bit weird, I still have to tell you seriously that you have been resurrected by me, Alice Phil. Dustless's gentle and slightly tired voice echoed in Alice Phil's ears. You can even do something like that. Don't tell me your family members are high-ranking officials in heaven. Can you get in through the back door? Alice Phil touched her body. She was both surprised and happy. She even cracked a joke, which was extremely rare. Can you revive Saber and Shurchin? At this moment, Kwai Inaka asked excitedly with a trembling voice. Her crystal eyes were filled with hope and passion. She even wanted to melt Dustless's heart. However, Dustless's face was as cold as ice. Her hopes were destined to be dashed. I'm sorry. I can't do that. The reincarnation of heaven technique can only be used a limited number of times. I can't use it casually. Dustless did not even think about it and directly rejected her. Without a doubt, the reason why Shurchin Inaka could be revived was because Dustless did not like this guy. He was not a good person either. It was better to say goodbye while it was still early. As for Sabra's situation, it was a bit special. The outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique, could revive someone from the dead. However, there was a very important prerequisite. In order to revive someone, the person must first be dead. However, Saber did not actually die. Other than Dustless, Saber was the only person who could not spiritualize. As for why, it was because she was not dead. It was impossible to revive someone who was not dead. Before Saber died, she made a deal with the world's consciousness to obtain the Holy Grail. The price was to become a heroic spirit and work for the world's consciousness. Therefore, the time before Saber's death was fixed. Saber was sent to participate in the Holy Grail War. When Saber obtained the Holy Grail, the world's consciousness fulfilled its promise. Only then would the time before Saber's death begin to flow. Saber would die and become a heroic spirit. As Saber was on the verge of death when she participated in the Holy Grail War, she was still alive. She was not a true heroic spirit. She was only fighting for the Holy Grail as a heroic spirit. Therefore, the outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique, could not revive Saber unless she was completely dead. Only then could Dustless activate the reincarnation of heaven technique to revive Saber. Chapter 1731. Although Dustless was strong, he wasn't omnipotent in some things. At least, he couldn't solve Saber's problem unless Saber was willing to commit suicide. Where's Kisi? Looking around, Alice Phil thought of Wei Gong Kisi. Him. He should be dead. Dustless was a little disappointed. He didn't expect Alice Phil to still care about that scumbag Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. That bastard. Alice Phil's next sentence stunned Dustless. Should. That bastard didn't die. Isn't the heavens blind? Alice Phil said fiercely. Her words were filled with endless disgust. Her expression was filled with resentment. At this moment, Alice Phil gave people the impression that she hated Wei Gong Kisi from the bottom of her soul. Why do you hate him so much? If I remember correctly, you two seem to be husband and wife. Dustless asked softly after being surprised. Alice Phil's sudden change in attitude caught him off guard. Husband and wife. It would have been better if Dustless didn't say the word husband and wife. As soon as his voice fell, Alice Phil, an active volcano, couldn't help but erupt instantly. She scolded angrily, "That bastard, he watched me being taken away by Yen Feng Chili without doing anything." No matter how I begged him, Wei Gong Qixi turned a deaf ear. Dustless was silent. He could understand Wei Gong Qixi's actions. It couldn't be helped. Alice Phil was the carrier of the Holy Grail. If he wanted to revive the Holy Grail, he had to kill her. Wei Gong Qixi, who wanted to get the Holy Grail, would definitely not save Alice Phil. It was good enough that he didn't do it himself. Speaking of which, is the Holy Grail war over? You can still maintain your body. Could it be, you won the final victory? Alice Phil looked at Dustless doubtfully. He was Sarvant. The Holy Grail war was over. Dustless could maintain his body. It could only mean that he won the final victory and used the Holy Grail to revive again. Due to some special reasons. I destroyed the Holy Grail. Dustless's face was filled with helplessness as he gave an answer that made Alice Phil not know whether to laugh or cry. My way of existence is somewhat bizarre. Even if the Holy Grail is destroyed, I won't disappear like the other heroic spirits, Dustless continued to explain. There is no victor in this Holy Grail war. Although it's a pity, I can still accept this ending. It's better than a hypocrite like Wei Gong Qixi obtaining the Holy Grail. Alice Phil heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a charming smile. Alice Phil seems to hate Wei Gong Qixi to death. Dustless looked directly at the gloating Alice Phil and nodded in relief. He asked, "Oh right, Alice Phil, I have something to ask you. There's no harm in telling me. I'll do my best to help you if I can." The corner of Alice Phil's mouth lifted slightly. A bright smile hung on her gentle face as she looked at Dustless's handsome face. A strange look flashed in her eyes as she took the initiative to approach Dustless. No matter what, Dustless might be despicable and shameless. He might be unscrupulous and use all the people he could to achieve his goals. However, one thing was certain. Dustless would definitely not be as despicable as Wei Gong Qixi. In order to achieve his goals, he would even use his own wife and disregard his own life. Dustless would definitely not use such a despicable method. Wei Gong Qixi used to summon Saber's holy item, Avalon, which is the scabbard of the Excalibur. If you want to summon Saber in the next Holy Grail war, you'll still need it. Dustless's meaning was self-evident. He hoped that Alice Phil would hand over Avalon. Forgive me for not being able to do that. Alice Phil looked like she was in a difficult position as she said bitterly, "Avalon is not with me. Before I was captured by Yen Feng Chili, Qixi had already taken it away. That heartless man." Dustless's face stiffened as a haze flashed across his face. He said in a deep voice, "That means Avalon is with Wei Gong Qixi. That kid is really despicable. Was this scene of him being burned by the Tensho purposely for me to see? Avalon could heal and recover all injuries. Even the aging process would be stopped. By releasing the real name, the strongest barrier of protection would be activated. Even interference based on magic would be ineffective. The existence of this relic itself was equivalent to magic. Are you planning to use Avalon to summon Saber in the next Holy Grail war? That's about 60 years later. You're really in love with Saber." Alice Phil rolled her eyes and was speechless. Dustless remained silent. He was too lazy to explain to Alice Phil. Some things could never be explained clearly. Moreover, the more he explained to a woman, the more blurry it would be. Silence was enough. "Let's wait quietly." Staring at the charming scenery outside the window, Dustless muttered to himself. It did not matter even if Avalon was not there. After all, someone would summon Saber for Dustless in the end. It was not bad to wait for 10 years. Time flew by like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Dustless was a 10-tailed beast. His lifespan and time were equivalent to infinity. He had no concept of time. It had passed in the blink of an eye. The biggest feeling he had was that Rin Enosaka and Sakurama had grown up from ignorant kids to young girls. At the same time, it meant that the Fifth Holy Grail War was coming. Time really flies. The next morning, Dustless got out of bed and stared lazily at the rising sun outside the window. 10 years felt like a day. There were no traces of age on his face. He always looked like he was 17 or 18 years old. In the warm bed, there was a white-haired woman curled up. She blinked her eyelashes and had a happy smile on her face. It was Alice Phil. Chapter 1732. After 10 years, Dustless had completely conquered Alice Phil. Dustless, what are you worried about? It's rare to see you frowning like this. Alice Phil, whose face was flushed red, poked her head out of the quilt and looked at Dustless, who was staring at the void. She stretched her body, and the happiness on her face could not be concealed. Women who had been nourished by men were all like this. Only when they lost something would they know how to cherish it. It was the same for everyone. A heartless betrayal led to the death of Alice Phil. After that, she was resurrected by Dustless with his heaven-defying ability. Alice Phil also obtained a brand new life. She valued Dustless very much, and he became everything in her life. It's nothing. It's just that the Fifth Holy Grail War is about to begin, and I still have no clue. I'm just a little annoyed. Waving his hand, Dustless signaled Alice Phil that there was no need to worry. Are you also going to participate in the Holy Grail War this time? Alice Phil hugged Dustless from behind. Her voice was trembling a little. It was obvious that she was worried. After all, the shadow of the previous Holy Grail War still existed. That's right. Who asked me to promise you? Dustless gently held Alice Phil's little hand, feeling the warmth between them, and said softly, if I don't participate in this Holy Grail War, Ilya will face the same ending as you. When the 3 words, Ilya, were mentioned, Alice Phil's whole body seemed to have been electrocuted. After a while, Alice Phil choked and said, thank you, Ilya is innocent. I don't want her to be implicated. Of course. Leave everything to me. Dustless smiled gently when he heard that. His confident look made people involuntarily feel relieved. Wei Gong Cheesy was a scumbag, but Ilya was different. Although the two were related by blood, their personalities were worlds apart. Compared to the despicable Wei Gong Cheesy, Ilya was much more naive. Just like what Alice Phil said, Ilya was innocent. She knew nothing about everything. Speaking of which, did you find Saber's holy relic, Avalon? Changing the topic, Alice Field worriedly said, we don't have any other heroic spirit's holy relics at the moment. It seems impossible to summon Sarvant. Avalon. Don't worry about it. Don't forget who I am. I'm a heroic spirit who obtained a body. Dustless smiled mysteriously and said, actually, I've already found Avalon, but I'm keeping it with that little brat for the time being. Alice Phil, I have something to deal with now. You can continue to rest for the time being. Something will happen to you. Alice Phil stared at Dustless in surprise. A hint of awkwardness flashed across her face. Over the years, Dustless spent most of his time doing things that were not suitable for children with her. Of course, there was also Rin's mother, Oki Enosaka. It was just that Rin and Tama Tonjing didn't know about it. The 3 of them often got together to do those kinds of shameless things. Dustless didn't force Oki Enosaka and Alice Phil. As the saying went, the fusion of yin and yang gave birth to all things. This was the nature of living things. The mutual taking of men and women was in line with the nature of all things. But the only thing that surprised Alice Phil was that Dustless rarely said the words, I have something to deal with, like today. Over the years, he spent most of his time idling around in the Ahrensburg family castle. They talked about love together, talked about life with Oki and Osaka and Alice Phil. When they were bored, they could even tease Rin and Tama Tanjing. Life was very enjoyable. Up to you. Just be careful. Alice Field nodded gently, and then lazily crawled back into her bed. Everything was left to Dustless to handle. He wasn't a scumbag like Kamiya Michiko, who needed a woman's help in everything he did. He even needed his wife to be the bait. At the end of the day, women were meant to be taken care of, not used as props. Creak. Gently pushing open the door, Dustless, who was wearing pajamas, walked out of the bedroom. In the corridor, he happened to pass by a young girl with a slightly gloomy expression. Rin, that's rare. I didn't expect you to be so gloomy. Looking at the dejected girl, Dustless lazily walked over. This person was Rin and Osaka, who had grown up. She was slim and graceful, and her body had inherited her mother's advantage. She had a curvy figure. Ling practically watched Dustless grow up. The relationship between the two people was also self-evident. Seeing Dustless slowly walk over, Rin and Osaka only snorted softly. You. Don't assume that everyone's thoughts are as dirty as yours. Really, how can there be such a weird heroic spirit like you? When Dustless, Oki and Osaka, and Alice Phil were talking about life, it was inevitable that Sakura and Rin would occasionally bump into them. When the two sisters were still young, he could still fool them, but now that they were older, it was impossible to continue fooling them. You're still as arrogant as before. Really, you might not be able to find a boyfriend if you're so ruthless. Dustless sighed compassionately. He was now Rin and Osaka's father in name. I don't need a weird uncle like you to poke your nose into other people's business. Rin and Osaka made a funny face, rudely rebuking Dustless. Hearing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched fiercely. A strange old cow who eats young grass. Watch your words. Dustless glared fiercely at Rin. Without further ado, he handed her a special bag. You're having a headache because of this, right? This is a heroic spirit's holy relic. Rin and Osaka was overjoyed. She stared straight at the ancient ruby necklace in Dustless's hand. Its unique ancient aura was faintly decaying. Chapter 1733. Rin and Osaka stared at the holy relic in Dustless's hand. She was just worried about not having a suitable holy relic to summon a heroic spirit, and Dustless was kind enough to give her a pillow. But, Rin and Osaka knew that things were not going well when she heard the sudden creepy laughter. She looked at Dustless's sly smile and knew that things were not as simple as she thought. Do you want it? Dustless waved the ruby necklace in his hand and licked his lips. He smiled innocently and said, Come, Rin, call me Daddy. Humph, don't even think about it. Rin and Osaka turned her head away without a second thought. She did not even look at Dustless. TSK, this courage is really admirable. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and then put away the holy relic with a look of pity. He sighed and said, It seems that some people have forgotten the glory of the Osaka family. So, it doesn't matter to her whether she participates in this Holy Grail war or not. She has nothing to do with the decline of the Osaka family. When he mentioned her, Wu Chen deliberately emphasized the word her, and his eyes even looked at Ling. The meaning was self-evident. This family, Rin glared at him and said word by word, You are a heroic spirit, but you are shameless enough to bully a weak little girl. You are a disgrace to all heroic spirits. Ha! A weak little girl. Dustless's eyes widened. He looked as if he had just discovered a new continent. He curled his lips and said, You always interrupt my business. If I don't teach you a lesson, you will become more and more presumptuous. Hurry up and call me Daddy, Rin. Every time Dustless talked about life with Alice Phil or Akui and Osaka, this mischievous little girl would come up with all sorts of strange reasons to send Akui and Osaka away. Dustless could only grit his teeth. Now that he finally had a chance to get back at her, he would not let it go so easily. Definitely not. Rin and Osaka still stubbornly shook her head. This was a matter of principle. No matter what, she would not compromise. Really? In other words, you don't plan to participate in this Holy Grail war. What a pity. I reckon that Shurchin will not die in peace. Farewell, Ling. Dustless left with a myriad of emotions. Hee, little girl, you still want to fight with me? No matter what, I've lived for hundreds of years. If I can't even deal with a stinky girl like you, where will I put my face? The moment he turned around, Dustless, whose back was facing Rin to Sokka, chuckled in his heart. At the same time, he thought to himself, in 3 seconds, this little girl will definitely lower her head to me. 3, 2, 1. Stop right there. Seeing that Dustless was really going to leave, Rin Enbin finally couldn't take it anymore and walked over angrily. This little girl's stubbornness is beyond words. She insists on being stubborn. Wouldn't it have been better if she had bowed her head earlier? Dustless slandered her in his heart. At the same time, he turned his head with a beautiful smile. I. Thinking about Dustless's shameful request, Rin Enbin's face was as red as an apple. My dear father. In the end, Rin gritted her teeth and called out with a resolute expression. That's more like it. Dustless smiled and nodded when he heard this. He decisively acted shamelessly and continued, Rin, repeat it for me. You have to say, my dear father, please give the holy relic to your daughter. Not a single word missing. Dustless, how shameless are you? Rin Enbin's face turned red when she heard this. In her heart, she cursed Dustless for being shameless. Did he have to be so shameless? You're not going to say it. Then goodbye. I still have things to do, so I'll leave first. Dustless turned around and left again. You win. Rin Enbin was so angry that she stomped her feet. In the end, she gritted her teeth and blocked Dustless again. Her smile was uglier than crying. My dear father, hurry up and give the holy relic to your daughter. Children should be so obedient. Only then will they be liked by adults. Take it, Rin. Dustless casually tossed the holy relic to Rin. He did not forget to remind her, actually, you don't have to participate in this Holy Grail war. After all, the final victor will still be me. Then I want to participate. Rin Enbin rolled her eyes at Dustless. She glared at him fiercely as if to say that she would not let this matter rest. Kid, you're still a kid. Dustless saw this and shook his head. Then, he directly left and rushed to another location, Miyashiro's house. The heavens have not abandoned me. This Holy Grail War is actually 50 years earlier than the previous one. Only 10 years have passed since the last war. In fact, this Holy Grail War has actually started earlier. In Miyashiro's house, a dispirited man with a face full of stubble was excitedly muttering to himself. His expression was abnormally excited. Even his hands and feet were trembling, very thought-provoking. This person was Mia Keisai. In the original work, he had actually died a few years ago. However, after Dustless's wanton destruction, this plane's development had already gone in the opposite direction from the original work. It was only similar in some areas. You want to continue participating in the Holy Grail War with this appearance of yours? You must be joking. A ghostly voice suddenly rang out without any warning. Could the owner of this voice be? When Mia Keisai heard this, his face turned gloomy. The joy on his face was also swept away. The tone of this nightmare's voice was the man he hated the most and the man he did not want to see the most in his life. He would never forget it even if he turned into ashes. 10 years ago, I destroyed the Holy Grail for today. The magic of the previous Holy Grail War was not released. Therefore, this Holy Grail War is 50 years earlier than the previous one. It is worth celebrating, but you have no right to participate. Chapter 1734. Unlucky, unlucky, unlucky. Wei Gongqi's old face turned green. His lips trembled as he cursed in his heart. All these years, he had been hiding from place to place, like an old book that couldn't see the light of day. He had been avoiding Wu Chen's pursuit endlessly, hiding in the dark world, plotting to make a comeback in the future. The heavens had indeed given Wei Gongqi face. The Holy Grail War that was supposed to happen once every 60 years actually started again after 10 years. Wei Gongqi thought that his hope had come. But, damn it, I washed my hands after going to the toilet. Why am I still so unlucky? Why did I meet this jinx? Wei Gongqi complained incessantly as 100,000 alpacas' army flew through his heart. Good things did not come true, but bad things did. The more fearful something was, the faster it would come. Wei Gongqi. So the reason you were able to live for so many years was because a despicable person like you stole Avalon from Aliceville, Dustless sneered and said indifferently, but you can hide now, but you can't hide forever. I've let you live for so many years. Now that I've sent you to the Western Paradise, I'm sure you have no regrets. How did you find me all of a sudden? Wei Gongqi's face was ashen. His face was filled with confusion and bewilderment. Wu Chen was like a ghost that could not be defended against. He had appeared silently. I can't tell you that. Do you have any last words? Dustless asked softly with a benevolent expression. He said generously, if you have any last words, just say it. I'm such a kind person. Let me take care of your wife and daughter. Pfft. Cough cough cough. When Wei Gongqi heard this, he choked on Dustless's words and coughed. He said angrily in his heart, take care of you. It's the best member to expand your harem. Hey, 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 don't show such an angry expression. Seeing the angry Wei Gongqi, Dustless waved his hand. After carefully sensing the condition of his body, he frowned and said, Avalon's aura seems to have disappeared. Did you transfer it to someone else? No comment. Wei Gongqi said expressionlessly as he closed his eyes in despair. It seemed like he did not intend to continue talking nonsense with Dustless. He acted as if he could do whatever he wanted with Dustless. He seemed to have accepted his fate, but there was nothing he could do about it. If it was someone else, Wei Gongqi would still fight, but if his opponent was Dustless, he could not muster up the courage to fight. If humans could fight against heroic spirits, then what was the point of having heroic spirits in the Holy Grail War? TSK, do you think I wouldn't know if you didn't tell me? What a joke. 10 years ago, you adopted a son. I remember you named him Wei Gongshirang, right? That kid was still alive and kicking after the fire I guided. There's only one possibility. You implanted Avalon into his body. Dustless calmly took a sip of the hot tea on the table and explained. You even found out about this matter. You want to kill the scholar now. Wei Gongqi's heart turned cold. Cold sweat was already dripping down from the depths of his forehead. Kill that brat. Of course not. At least for the time being, I have no reason to kill him. Dustless shook his head as he heard this. The corner of his mouth revealed a meaningful and evil smile. What are you scheming? When Wei Gongqi heard that Dustless was going to let the scholar go, his heart immediately relaxed. Then, he saw that terrifying demon-like smile. Wei Gongqi understood that his thoughts were too naive. Would a temperamental demon let go of his enemy's son? Absolutely impossible. That guy has Avalon in his body. It's just right for him to summon Saber. Dustless did not hide his intentions and answered straightforwardly. I want to be a candidate for master, but that great holy grail keeps rejecting my power for some reason. It's really an abominable tool. Since that's the case, I can only use your precious son. When Wei Gongqi heard this, he was secretly worried. As Dustless's former master and enemy, he knew how terrifying Dustless's strength was. Once he was done using Wei Gongqi, it was very likely that he would kill him directly. Alright, it's getting late. Let's end our conversation here. It's time to send you on your way. A large amount of light appeared in Dustless's hand. The light was aimed directly at Wei Gongqi's head. If his head was chopped off, everything would be over. Who are you? Why are you in my father? What do you want to do to my father? At this moment, a sharp roar of shock and anger was suddenly heard. It's you. When Dustless heard this, he stopped what he was doing. His clear eyes turned around and looked over. What he saw was a red-haired young man. Who are you? Get the hell away from my dad. The young man clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were red as he angrily locked onto Dustless. When he saw Dustless holding the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword and aiming it at Wei Gongqi's neck, he became even more nervous. This idiot still dares to talk nonsense. Especially when he's angry and wants to challenge me. How childish is this kid? He really deserves the title of Ardwolf. When Dustless saw this, he scolded and mocked, "Little brat, if I were you, I would run away now and not stay here and wait for death. Scholar, leave now. This is a personal grudge between me and him. It's not up to an outsider like you to interfere." Wei Gongqi ordered in a low voice. Disappear now. Outsider. I'm not an outsider. I'm my father's son. I won't allow anyone to hurt you. Wei Gongqi's tone was raised a few times. His fearless voice made people respect him. Chapter 1735. This scene is really touching to the point of tears. Dustless wiped his tears, as if he was really touched by Wei Gongqi. Tears flowed out of his eyes in an exaggerated manner, as if he was filled with self-blame and shame. If you are really touched, you should let my father go. Wei Gongqi shouted loudly, otherwise, people like you will be punished by the heavens sooner or later. I am thinking for your future. Wei Gongqi added a strange sentence, you better not make a mistake. Ha! Is there something wrong with your brain? You are actually lecturing me. Wei Gongqi, pay attention to your status. Little brat, don't be so shameless. You are just a human brat. When Dustless heard this, the tears at the corner of his eyes instantly disappeared. His expression was cold as he snorted. Some people were just so self-righteous. The more you gave them face, the more they would show off. You! Wei Gongqi was enraged. His scarlet eyes flashed with a red light and he looked just like a wild beast. If it wasn't for Wu Chen's Heaven Cluster Cloud sword that was placed on Wei Gongqi's neck, perhaps this fellow would have already rushed over to fight to the death. Move the sword away. Wei Gongqi suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a deep voice, let go of my father, and I could treat it as if this matter did not happen. We will not owe each other anything in the future. This brat is really stupid. Maybe he thinks that I am a burglar. Dustless shook his head when he heard this. It seemed that this brat still did not understand his status and thought that he was the victor. In reality, it was just as Dustless had guessed. Wei Gongqi thought that he was a burglar. Shiro, you idiot, leave quickly. This is not something you can interfere in. Wei Gong Keisai also warned. He was already prepared to be killed. This was a personal grudge between him and Dushless. Absolutely not. When Wei Gong Keisai heard this, he stubbornly shook his head and said loudly, "No matter where you come from, if you dare to harm my father, I will definitely, Puchi." Without waiting for Wei Gong Shiro's voice to fall, Dustless controlled the golden heavenly sword of gathering clouds to chop down horizontally. The scorching light that could cut through iron like mud shattered Wei Gong Qisi's body. Bang! A badly mangled and charred head fell to the ground. Paw, paw, paw. Wei Gongshi was dumbfounded. He stared at the head that had died with its eyes wide open. Even though the head had been chopped off, its eyes were still open as it stared at Wei Gongshi. He did not expect that Dushless would suddenly attack so viciously. Moreover, his methods were so vicious. He crushed Wei Gong Qisi's head without any guilt. "Oh. I'm going to kill you. I must kill you." After being stunned for a while, Wei Gong Shilang suddenly stood up like an enraged lion. He glared at Dustless with his blood-red eyes. His bulging eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Gulu gulu. Within Wei Gong Shilang's body, a large area of green veins swam up and down. It was extremely horrifying. Just like Jiantong Yayan, his entire body was filled with a deadly pressure. Hee, the only thing that was not flattering was that in such a solemn atmosphere, a burst of mocking laughter could be heard. Looking up, it was Dustless with a face full of smiles. "Do you want to take revenge for your stupid father? Bring it on, little brat." Hooking his finger, Dustless's face was filled with provocation. That arrogant look in his eyes gave people the feeling that he was looking at an insect. It was filled with endless mockery and contempt. "If I don't kill you, I'm not human." Wei Gong Shilang was enraged. He pointed to the sky and swore. After that, he picked up the steel pipe on the ground and flew over. Shoo shoo shoo. Although Wei Gong Shilang was just an ordinary human, because Wei Gong Qisi had trained him frequently, his speed had almost reached the limit of a human speed. Shoo shoo shoo. His body was like a gust of wind as he appeared in front of Dustless. The steel pipe was also aimed at Dustless's head. Pang! Who would have expected that Dustless would raise his eyelids and glance at the steel pipe lightly before grabbing it directly? "Is that all you've got? So weak that it's pitiful." Wuchen glanced at the shocked Wei Gong Shirang with pity. He couldn't help but shake his head. This guy really regarded himself as an insignificant character. Seeing that Wei Gong Shirlang was in a daze, Dustless raised his hand and slapped him. Slap, slap, slap. Although it was only 20-30 meters, Dustless had slapped Wei Gong Shirlang dozens of times consecutively. That fellow's head was swollen like a pig's head, and blood flowed out continuously from the corner of his mouth. Pang! Following that, Dustless kicked Wei Gong Shirlang in the air, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. He fell to the ground miserably, and could only mutter weakly. After being beaten up by Dustless, Wei Gong Shirlang was badly injured. His mouth was crooked, and he could not speak properly. It gave people the impression that he was stuttering. "Idiot, I still need your help to summon Saber. This time, I'll let you be arrogant for a while. In the future, when you're no longer useful, I'll send you and your father to meet in heaven." Dustless retracted his killing intent. Although he could not wait to kill Wei Gong Shirlang and get rid of this annoying cockroach, the current situation did not allow Dustless to act recklessly. There was one thing that could not be denied, and that was that it was not the best time yet. If Wei Gong Shirlang was killed, the person who could summon Saber would disappear completely. Live on while you're at death's door. Ignoring the wailing Wei Gong Shirlang, Dustless brushed past him. He wanted to use his own ability to summon Saber, but the probability was 0. First of all, it was impossible for a heroic spirit to become a master, and it was even more impossible for him to perform the ritual to summon Sarvant. Although Dustless's abilities were special in some aspects, it did not mean that he was omnipotent. Chapter 1736. Damn it, Wei Shiro's face was ashen as he touched his chin that was kicked crooked. His old face was flushed red with shock and anger. He was so embarrassed. He wanted to stand up again, but his body was so weak that it felt like it was about to fall apart. As soon as he stood up, he fell to the ground. It was impossible for him to muster the strength to fight back against Dustless. This guy is definitely not a normal human. Wei Shiro's face was filled with fear and panic. Even though Wei Qixi had told him about the magician profession, it was completely different from what he had imagined. Especially when it was an existence that was so strong that he could not deal with it. Useless trash. Dustless turned his head and looked at Wei Shiro, who was curled up in the corner like a kitten. He sighed in boredom and retreated lazily. A mere mongrel was too weak. There was no value in exploring it. It was just a pawn. Speaking of which, I wonder how things are going on Rin's side. I wonder if she managed to summon Archer. Dustless lowered his head and pondered. After handing over the holy relic to her, Rin Enbin could not wait any longer and disappeared. Dustless did not know if the ritual to summon Sarvant was successful or not. During this time, Dustless also tried to summon Sarvant, but it ended in failure. Seriously, I can even destroy a planet, but I can't summon a heroic spirit. In the quiet alley, Dustless sighed softly. He looked up at the sky. His bright eyes were a little dazed, and there was a hint of self-mockery. And, suddenly, Dustless turned his head to look at the dark alley behind him. He said softly, "After following me for so long, I think it's time for you to come out. Let me see which heroic spirit you are." Ah, what a headache. You actually discovered my existence. TSK, looks like you're even weirder than I thought. The atmosphere was silent for a while, and then suddenly there was a shocked voice. When I heard that Master wanted me to assassinate a human, I felt that my dignity was being insulted. But I didn't expect you to discover me. You're worthy of being killed by me. I'm very confident in my concealment skills, but you discovered me. This is something that humans can't do. A man in a suit similar to the European Middle Ages came out from the left side of the alley, holding a blood-red spear in his hand. His gloomy eyes fell on Dustless, full of shock. To be honest, he was really shocked that a human had discovered his tracks. This outfit, and that gun. You must be a Lancer, right? After a few seconds of silence, Dustless revealed Lancer's identity. At the same time, he could not help but feel a headache in his heart. He had no part in the Fifth Holy Grail War, but he was dragged into it by some random person. He felt really depressed and wronged. After all, Dustless's current identity was neither master nor servant. To put it bluntly, he was just an unemployed vagrant. Who sent you here? Dustless asked in surprise. Could it be Yen Feng, Qi Li? Really, the luck of these two brats was better than the other. It's fine that Wei Qixi is still alive, but Yen Feng Qi Li is still alive too. TSK, who knows? I'm not interested in knowing Master's name. Lancer held his spear with both hands and stared at Dustless with burning eyes. He did not hide his desire to fight at all. Bring it on. Dustless curled his finger and smiled innocently. Don't you plan to use a weapon? Lancer frowned and looked at Dustless, who was barehanded. He was rather unhappy and even a little angry. He thought to himself, what does this brat mean? Why doesn't he use a weapon? Is he looking down on me? Hee hee, the corner of Dustless's mouth curled up slightly. His bright eyes saw through Lancer's inner thoughts. You guessed right, I look down on trash like you. Human, you're looking for death. Lancer was infuriated when he heard Wu Chen's words. A ruthless glint flashed across his eyes. Immediately, he turned into an afterimage and thrust the spear in his hand at Wu Chen's eyes. Lancer was particularly annoyed by the look of contempt in dustless eyes. Bang bang bang. The light of the spear pierced through Dustless's head. The entire tip of the spear was inserted into Dustless's eyes. His skull was destroyed. Even the gods would not be able to save him and he would die without a doubt. The touch doesn't feel right. Lancer's face froze. He subconsciously pulled out the spear tip. There was a huge hole in Dustless's eyes, but it recovered in less than a second. Is that all? Staring at the shocked Lancer, Dustless did not hold back. You want to shake me with such a crude physical attack? You overestimate your ability, Lancer. Now. It's my turn to fight back. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Activating the ability of the flash fruit, Dustless's body flashed and crossed through layers of space. He instantly appeared behind Lancer. On the other hand, this guy was still looking left and right. He did not notice Dustless's existence behind him. Although heroic spirits were far stronger than humans, they were not invincible. For example, the speed of light. Lancer could not rely on his naked eyes to capture Dustless's tracks. Little did he know that when Dustless and Lancer were fighting, two figures were watching the changes with interest. Where did that guy's heroic spirit come from? It seems like the outcome is decided in an instant. Should we launch a sneak attack, Master? Chapter 1737. Kill him. How confident are you? The girl who was called Master asked. Her eyes were filled with hope. She hoped that her hero spirit could kill Dustless. How confident? The male hero spirit fell silent. His voice was filled with ripples. He shook his head and pondered for a few seconds. A sneak attack is still possible. If it's a head-on battle, I'm afraid 10 of me won't be his match. Archer, you're not purposely going easy on him, are you? The girl with delicate features pouted. She was annoyed by Archer's answer. 10 of you won't be his match. How are you going to help me get the Holy Grail? Don't say such hurtful words in the future. I'll doubt your ability, Archer. The girl with the ponytail put her hands on her hips and looked at Archer arrogantly. Ling, I'm just telling the truth. If that guy can really use that kind of insane speed, I think none of the hero spirits will be his match in close combat. Don't forget, I'm an archer. Close combat isn't my forte. Archer said honestly. He looked at Dustless with fear. Is that so? Ling Anbin fell silent. He then nodded and said, but Dustless isn't master or servant. So we don't have to worry. In fact, we're allies. Allies? The red-clothed, white-haired archer was stunned. He said in surprise, if he's not master or servant, why is he our ally? Is he your relative? Ling? No, Dustless is the winner of the last Holy Grail War. Ling Anbin shook his head. He then took the initiative to walk toward Dustless. Lightspeed kick. The flash of a foot landed on Lancer's body. Lancer, who didn't even have time to react, was sent flying like a cannonball. Boom! 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 A blazing fireball rose into the air, and Lancer's entire body was pulled into the flames. There was a special smell in the air. It was the smell of Lancer being cooked. You overestimate yourself, how dare you ambush me? Dustless sneered at Fireball. Go home and train for another 8 to 10 years. You're too weak, Lancer. However, at the same time, a sudden change occurred. Swish! Swish! Dustless was stunned for a moment when he heard a sharp sound of something breaking through the air behind him. He turned around and asked in surprise, "Is this a red gem? Could it be Ling? Did he summon Archer?" But Ling, you're still as laughably naive as ever. Staring at the incoming gem, Dustless sneered indifferently. His pupils widened slightly, and the black flames instantly eroded and annihilated the gem. Tens ho! In the blink of an eye, the gemstone was engulfed by the sea of fire. The endless black flames devoured the surface of the ground and spread towards Archer at a terrifying speed. This kind of fire can't be extinguished. Archer was sweating profusely. He stared at the evil nightmare fire and could not help but have goosebumps. He looked at Dustless's eyes. That terrifying silence was like an abyss. It made one's scalp tingle, and it was very uncomfortable to breathe. Ling seems to know this guy, and their relationship seems to be quite good. Fortunately, this kind of person is not an enemy. Archer had never doubted his own intuition. He had been on the battlefield for a long time, and he had already trained his senses to be different from ordinary people. He could detect how terrifying Dustless was. He was like a sleeping wild beast. Strange, you're not master. This is the 5th Holy Grail War. Your identity as servant should be over. Why would that guy ambush you? Ling Anbin looked at Dustless in confusion. After staring for a while, he said strangely, "Dustless. Don't tell me you're flirting with other people's master. You. Am I that kind of wretched person in your heart?" Dustless was extremely unhappy. His eyes were staring at the red-clothed Archer next to Ling. "You look good." Dustless nodded to Archer as a greeting. He continued to ask, "You'll attract other people's attention if you walk around with a follower like this." That's exactly what I want." Ling Anbin put his hands on his waist and said with a proud expression, "Archer, go and deal with Lancer. Let me see your strength." Ling Anbin ordered while pointing at Lancer in the ruins. "Every dog has its day. This debt, I'll settle it sooner or later." Lancer retreated after seeing Archer appear. Dustless was already difficult enough, and Archer seemed to be his ally. If he wanted to defeat them, he would need at least 10 lives. "Don't chase him, let him go." Dustless opened his hand and stopped Archer. He smiled viciously and said, "I left the Flying Thunder God Warlock on Lancer. I can locate his coordinates at any time. As long as that guy meets his master, I'll kill them." Flying Thunder God Warlock. What's that? Archer and Ling Anbin asked at the same time. Dustless was speechless for a moment. This kind of thing could not be explained easily. He could only lie. You can treat it as a positioning radar. It can appear beside Lancer at any time. I've already marked him as dead. Chapter 1738. Both Archer and Rin Anbin were confused. They didn't know what Dustless was talking about, but they understood the basic meaning. This was a very special technique. As long as the user left some kind of energy mark on the enemy, they wouldn't be able to escape from the nightmare that Dustless had created for them. What a despicable person. You let him go on purpose, didn't you? When he returns to Master, he will activate the technique called Flying Thunder God Sorcerer. Rin Anbin snorted disapprovingly. He cursed Dustless for being so cunning. Despicable. Ling, you'd better remember this well. The people who live the longest in the world are usually the despicable ones. They are the ones who are good at scheming. Dustless rolled his eyes as he lectured Rin. Let's go back for now. The Flying Thunder God Sorcerer can't be eliminated anyway. We can find the right time to kill that kid. In the Ahrensburg family's castle. Dustless and Rin walked back side by side. As for Archer, he was tricked by Dustless into attacking Wei Gong Shiro. There was no other reason than to help Wei Gong Shiro become master. Archer didn't like Dustless's order. After all, his master was Rin Enbin. However, after thinking about it, he finally agreed with Dustless's plan. Compared to the cunning Dustless, Rin was still too naive. Strange, Dustless and Rin stopped in front of the Ahrensburg family's castle. The barrier that was set up in the past was broken. Rin reached out to touch the air and found that he could easily invade the barrier. The barrier that covered the Ahrensburg family used to have a thin layer. Damn it! Although that barrier was set up a long time ago, it's impossible for ordinary people to break it. Only one kind of person can do this. Speaking up to here, Rin Enbin's expression suddenly became anxious, and he quickly ran towards the luxurious villa. Rin, although it's undeniable that someone broke in, there's no need to worry. They don't have any bad intentions. A calm and composed voice rang out. Dustless lazily followed up and said, "You still can't tell. Other than the destruction of the barrier around the building, there are no other signs of fighting." After Dustless's reminder, Rin Enbin's gaze shifted slightly. He found that it was just as Dustless had said. Other than the broken barrier, the buildings and lush green grass were all brand new. There were no traces of broken walls or glass shards. There was not even the slightest sign of battle. After careful consideration, the other party was indeed not the type to come with ill intentions. "Let's go in and take a look." Seeing Rin Enbin's worried expression, Dustless pulled her into the castle. Sigh, sigh, sigh. You two haven't come to see me for so many years. It's very hard for me to live alone. This is wrong. You have to compensate me for my loss. A young girl's coquettish voice sounded from Alice Phil's room. The soft and ethereal voice was very pleasant to the ears. Although it sounded barbaric and unreasonable, the young girl's tone was unusually soft and gentle. It was hard to dislike her. Could it be that she came? Dustless, who was walking to Alice Phil's room, suddenly stopped. This soft voice and slightly arrogant tone could only lead to one person. It must be her. Dustless's head skimmed through the gap in the door. A young girl with long white hair came into view. It was exactly as he had guessed. As expected, Ilya came uninvited. No wonder she could tear apart the barrier. With Berserker's ability, this is more than enough. Dustless instantly understood. He subconsciously looked at Rin Enbin, hoping that she would leave for a moment. However, she seemed to have deliberately broken into the door. Where did this thief come from? How dare you break into my house? Rin Enbin displayed her chilly side and reprimanded loudly with her hands on her hips. After all, her mother, Kue Enbin, also lived in this castle, so it was normal for Rin to be angry. However, it was worth mentioning that the person she provoked this time wasn't a good person either. Rin, your temper has gotten worse. The young girl, who was as delicate as a porcelain doll, wasn't afraid at all. She looked into Rin's eyes and snorted. Your temper has gotten worse, but your strength is still average. Be careful, I will let Berserker teach you a lesson even if you are mother's friend. An uninvited guest like you dares to spout such arrogant words. Rin's anger accumulated in his heart. It was fine if Ilya didn't apologize, but now, she even wanted to teach him a lesson. If he could tolerate it, what else could he tolerate? Archer. Berserker. The two of them didn't like each other and instantly attacked. Rin Enbin was the most exaggerated. He directly used a command spell to order Archer to rush over as reinforcements. These two really can't tolerate each other. Dustless had a headache. In the original work, the relationship between Rin Enbin and Ilya was very bad. Dustless wanted to persuade the two of them, but the two of them looked at him with indignant gazes. Who are you helping? These 3 simple words made it difficult for Dustless to resist. After all, the 2 of them were related to Dustless in countless ways. Especially their mothers, who had already become one of them. Rin, put down your dagger. And Ilya, throw away the stool in your hand. Chapter 1739. Dustless was in a dilemma when he saw this. With a stern face, he scolded, "Be clear about your identities. Although you are both masters and are in opposition to each other, the 2 of you can definitely try to work together before this. Work together with her. Don't even think about it." Ilya and Rin and Osaka said at the same time with great tacit understanding. "You're really asking for a beating." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. However, he still released his clenched fist. He could teach the enemy a lesson if they angered him, but it was a different story for Rin and Ilya. Dustless also felt troubled. Immediately, he looked at Alice Field helplessly. "It's rare to see you so helpless, Ilya. Now isn't the time for you to fight." Alice Field pursed her lips into a smile and patted Ilya's head. Although Ilya was pouting, Alice Field's words were clearly more effective than Dustless. "I'll let you go this time," Ilya said angrily. In the end, she rubbed against Alice Field's chest unwillingly. "Humph. Just a little brat," Rin and Osaka immediately retorted. In fact, she was relieved. If she were to face Ilya alone, she wouldn't have any chance of winning. After all, Berserker's stats were second to none. "Ilya, you didn't appear here to assassinate us, right?" Dustless casually took an apple from the fruit plate and nibbled on it. He said vaguely, "The 2 of you should stop before going too far. If the 2 of you get into a fight like this next time, I can't just ignore it." His words were full of warning, but the effect was surprisingly poor. Ilya continued to joke with Alice Field while Rin and Osaka held her head high with her hands in front of her, completely ignoring Dustless's existence. Little brats these days will start fighting just because of a disagreement. And if they can't defeat the other party, they will indiscriminately vent their resentment on the adults. Dustless kept the words that were about to come out of his mouth. His gaze suddenly fell on Archer, who suddenly appeared. This guy was originally carrying out a mission outside, but he was forcefully summoned back by Rin and Osaka's command spell. "Archer, how is Wei Gong Shiro?" Lazily sitting on the sofa, Dustless poured himself a cup of coffee and asked softly, "Did the kid summon Saber? I've prepared so much for him. Don't disappoint me." Archer had a strange look on his face when he heard this. He was silent for a while before muttering, "According to your plan, I forced Wei Gong Shiro into a corner." In the end, according to your plan, Wei Gong Shiro successfully summoned Saber. However, the result was too different from what I expected. At this point, Archer's tone suddenly stopped, and his expression became even more strange. "The result is different from what I imagined. This is interesting. Tell me about it." Seeing Archer's hesitant look, Dustless's interest was piqued. "Did you lose to Saber?" "You don't have to take it to heart. Winning and losing are normal. Just look at it rationally. Besides, you're an archer. You're at a disadvantage in close combat. Losing to Saber is normal. Long-range sneak attacks were Archer's specialty. It's not that I lost to Saber. It's just that we didn't fight." Seeing that Dustless had misunderstood his meaning, Archer quickly shook his head and said bluntly, "After Wei Gong Shiro summoned Saber, Saber saw me chasing after Wei Gong Shiro. Instead of helping, instead." Dustless looked at Archer in surprise. After taking a sip of coffee, he said, "What was the result? Don't tell me that Saber helped you chase after Wei Gong Shiro." You're right this time. Saber did indeed ignore my existence. She watched as I chased after that brat Wei Gong Shirlang. Not only did she not help him, she even helped the tyrant. She cheered for me, hoping that I could kill Wei Gong Shirlang. Poochie. Dustless spat out all the coffee in his throat, and his eyes suddenly widened. Saber. Really, even if she hates Wei Gong Shiro, there is no need to hate his son. No, it doesn't matter if she hates his son. She doesn't want him to die so soon. When Wei Gong Shiro died, Saber would also disappear. Because of Saber's special identity, it seemed difficult to resurrect her with the outer path of reincarnation technique. Wei Gong Shiro, that kid must be angry when he met such a strange spirit. Dustless couldn't help but be speechless. He didn't expect Saber to have such a personality. Not only was she indifferent when she saw her master being chased, but what was even more melodramatic was that Saber even encouraged Archer to chase after Wei Gong Shiro. This kind of plot was worlds apart from the original work. Now there was such a huge change, it was all because of Dustless's instigation. Saber won't kill Wei Gong Shiro impulsively, Dustless frowned and thought secretly. Castor was a living example. He was dissatisfied with his master. As a result, he killed his master and fled to Ludong Temple. It's impossible to kill master without using the command seal. Ling heard Dustless's whisper and interrupted, unless Wei Gong Shiro consumes all the command seal, Servant can't kill master, so that's how it is. The relationship between them is really troublesome. Dustless nodded gently, touched his chin and said to himself, anyway, that kid will be killed sooner or later. It's okay to let him be for a while. Chapter 1740. I really envy you masters. Dustless was embarrassed, like an overturned jar of vinegar, his whole body was filled with a sour feeling. At first, he dreamed that he could become a master. Although Dustless was not a magician, he could also become a master. For example, Gomu Soichiro was not a magician, but he finally became a master. The only difference was that the servant and the master signed a contract in a strange way. Gomu and Castor signed a contract by having sex on their first night of marriage. Dustless could also sign a contract with other heroic spirits in this way, but the probability of Saber being willing to do this is no less than the sun rising from the west. Dustless let out a long breath. He knew that he had no chance to be a master in this life. Glancing at Alice Field and her daughter who were chatting and laughing, as well as Rin Enbin who was still angry, Dustless tactfully retreated. The whole room was filled with a thick smell of gunpowder. If he didn't leave as soon as possible, he might be involved in an inexplicable topic again. The Holy Grail must be mine. As soon as he came out of the room to breathe, an extremely angry voice came from behind him. Rin, I won't stop the fight between you two, who let it be destined. However, I will definitely not allow you to harm each other's lives. I promised Alice Field that I would protect Ilya and live a carefree life. Dustless's nerves were tense, his expression was serious. He knew that there could only be one winner between Rin Enbin and Ilya. The rules of the Holy Grail War were like this, both of them wanted to get the Holy Grail, so they were destined to win and lose. I say, you are too biased, you should say this kind of thing to that little devil Ilya, and the person you should worry about is not her, but me. Ilya's berserker is stronger than my archer. Rin Enbin was jealous, the red archer was not the opponent of the golden sparkle, and it was not the opponent of the berserker. That's right, anyway. I don't want you to get hurt, just think of it as an entertainment to kill time. Dustless scratched his head and didn't comment on her words. In the original work, the red coat archer was killed by Elias berserker. No matter what, don't overdo it. Dustless couldn't be bothered to stop the conflict between Rindosaka and Ilya. Both of them were masters, and for the sake of each other's honor, both of them had to obtain the so-called Holy Grail. It was inevitable that there would be a victor, as long as they didn't harm each other's lives. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. That night, Ilya did not leave. Instead, she chose to stay here and occupied Dustless's bed. Dustless, who was originally sleeping with Alice Phil, could only move. In the middle of the night, he shamelessly ambushed Oki and Osaka. She was used to this kind of thing anyway. At first, Oki and Osaka was embarrassed, but she couldn't stand Dustless's coaxing and pestering. Especially when it came to this kind of thing, Dustless's shamelessness was through the roof. In the end, Oki and Osaka succumbed. Under the sugar-coated attack, she lost her intelligence and ability to resist. She just subconsciously cooperated with Dustless, and the two spent the night together. Bang bang bang. As soon as he put on his pajamas, there was a dull sound of someone pounding on the door. Such a big commotion, is it Ling? Hearing the violent noise, Dustless instantly shivered. It would be a tragedy if Oki and Osaka caught him red-handed. Dustless, whose skin was thicker than the city walls, was fine, but as for Oki and Osaka, she would never be able to raise her head to face Ling in the future. Bang! Just as Dustless was about to leave, the locked door was suddenly opened. Dustless! Why are you here? Fortunately, the person who invaded the bedroom wasn't Rindo Saka, but the more innocent Sakura Tadashi. Well, Dustless was at a loss for words. He really didn't know how to answer this awkward question. I'm here to call your mother for breakfast. Dustless made up a ridiculous excuse with a fake smile, and deliberately changed the topic. Sakura, you don't look well. Are you feeling unwell? He touched Sakura's forehead. She didn't have a fever. I'm fine. Sakura answered with a red face. She stared at Dustless's face and gritted her teeth. My older brother, Shinji Tadashi, has been harassing me recently. I want to rest at home today. I won't go to school for the time being. Shinji Tadashi. A blue-haired young man suddenly popped into Dustless's mind. Although he had killed Shinji Tadashi, the other members of the Tadashi family hadn't done anything. Harassing you again. Shinji, that brat, sure has guts. Dustless's face was as cold as ice. Shinji Tadashi wasn't a good person, and so was Shinji Tadashi. In fact, other than Sakura, the entire Tadashi family wasn't a good person. Leave this matter to me. Giving her a comforting look, Dustless patted the girl's shoulder and signaled Sakura to rest assured. At that time, because of Sakura, the Tadashi family hated him to the core. Sakura was an important prop. After being robbed by Dustless, the Tadashi family was so angry that they gritted their teeth. However, due to the gap in strength, the Tadashi family had always been afraid to speak out and kept a low profile. In the past, Shinji Tadashi had also looked for Sakura several times. As a result, he was beaten violently by Dustless and ran away. Tut tut, after becoming a master, Shinji Tadashi's temper has become a lot worse. He probably thinks that his wings have hardened. Dustless's face became colder and colder. In the past, he could have regarded Shinji Tadashi as young and insensible. But this brat had repeatedly touched Dustless's bottom line. He could only be eliminated. What's more, he was a master. Killing him was also eliminating a potential enemy. Chapter 1741. In the school where Sakura usually went to school. Sakura, that guy didn't seem to come to school today. Does he think he can avoid me like this? What an idiot. I can go to her house at any time. With Ryder, I don't have to be afraid of that hateful man. The people of the Tong family will always belong to the Tong family. That damn thief. On the roof, Tong Shinji looked at the dense crowd below and said to himself. As he spoke, his face became ferocious, and his fist uncontrollably pounded the fence in front of him. Bang bang bang. Under the agitation, Tong Shinji pounded a few times in succession, and then roared in pain, "Damn it, it hurts. It's all because of that hateful man Dushless. I must kill him. Ah ah ah. You want to go to my house to make trouble? You want to kill me, boy, your ambition is really big." A faint ripple appeared in the void, and the voice immediately spread without warning. "This is," Tong Shinji's pupils shrank. This calm and indifferent voice, in Tong Shinji's ears, was extremely harsh, and even made his eardrums hurt. When he went to the Ahrensburg family to ask for Tong Ying, he was beaten violently by the owner of this voice. Tong Shinji lay in bed for a few months before he could barely stand up. "Don't show such a hateful look. You're lucky. For example, your grandfather Tong Zhangyan, that old guy, was directly torn to pieces." A faint ripple appeared in the void again, and then a large number of flashing ripples condensed. A thin figure with hands in pockets entered the eyes. "It's really you, Ryder." Seeing Dustless's hateful face, a figure suddenly appeared beside Tong Shinji. "Master." A beautiful purple-haired girl suddenly appeared, and very respectfully knelt on one knee. "Hateful bastard, do you think I'm still the weak me now?" Tong Shinji arrogantly raised his head, and asked arrogantly, "It's undeniable that your strength is very strong, but in the end, you're just a human. You can't be the opponent of a spirit." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, Dustless smiled coldly, and in a flash, he came to Tong Shinji. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The flowing light was unstoppable. In an instant, ignoring the existence of distance, it arrived in front of Tong Shinji in the blink of an eye. And under the latter's surprised gaze, it grabbed Tong Shinji's neck in a flash. So fast. Ryder was shocked. Was this the speed a human should have? Not to mention humans, even heroic spirits could not achieve such speed. "Put Master down." After being stunned for a moment, Ryder hurriedly attacked. With a light wave of her hand, a cold light pierced towards Dustless's face. Binding Tao 81, sky-shattering. Dustless remained motionless. The spiritual pressure in his body surged slightly, and then a transparent barrier formed in an instant. Bang! A dull explosion spread out, but the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing only shook slightly. It remained as immovable as a mountain and was not destroyed. Is Ryder really a god? He's so weak. Dustless's heart was full of doubts. He knew that Ryder's real body was actually Medusa, an out-and-out goddess. Although that was the case, the performance of her strength was really not flattering. "Ryder, you useless trash." Tong Shinji's face turned green, and his breathing became weaker and weaker. He was still choked by Dustless. "Are you qualified to say that others are trash?" Dustless's gaze fell on Tong Shinji again, and he said contemptuously, "Shinji, trash like you is even worse than trash. Using trash on you is an insult to it. You." Tong Shinji glared at Dustless. His ferocious eyes could not wait to swallow Dustless alive. This guy dared to ridicule him like this. It was an unforgivable capital offense. Fragile. Dustless looked at Tong Shinji with pity. This guy was just like him. He did not know any magic, but he insisted on participating in the Holy Grail War. Wasn't this a typical behavior of looking for abuse? "Shinji, sometimes I wonder if your head is made of stone. You don't know how to think." A cold light flashed across his face. Dustless then waved, and then casually threw Tong Shinji out. Bang! Tong Shinji's body smashed on the thick wall, and the surface showed dense cracks. Tong Shinji suddenly spat out blood, and his internal organs were shaking. "You bastard!" Tong Shinji flew into a rage. His mouth was full of blood, and he looked at Ryder. "Kill him for me." "Understood, master." Ryder nodded like a zombie, and picked up her weapon tied with iron chains again. Even with the blindfold, she could not see, but because of the characteristics of Medusa, she could still smell Dustless from the atmosphere. Yo, Ryder, why don't we talk about a deal? Following Shinji, this trash, you will be dragged down sooner or later. Dustless's killing intent converged, and he whispered, you should be able to see the ability of this guy. Although I am also a dabbler in magic, I am at least stronger than him. Damn, you bastard, do you want to instigate Ryder to betray me? Are you kidding me? I will never allow this to happen, absolutely not. Tong Shenner was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He jumped up with a rub. Betray. It's really not appropriate to use this phrase to describe it. Since the master can choose the holy relic to summon servant, why can't the servant summon the master? Dustless did not care about Tong Shinji's livid face. When he was about to continue to speak, a very discordant figure broke into the farce. Chapter 1742. The mysterious intruder was wearing the same uniform as Shinji Tsushima. He had a head of messy short red hair, and coincidentally, Dustless found that he actually knew him, and he belonged to the type that he was rather familiar with. TSK, isn't this Wei Gong Shiro? I've heard that you and Shinji have a good relationship. The rumors are true. You came to save the damsel in distress so quickly. Dustless touched his chin and teased. You, this guy, as the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Wei Gong Shiro saw Dustless's ugly face, and his face was filled with killing intent. A while ago, Dustless killed Wei Gong Shiro's father, Wei Gong Shiro, in front of Wei Gong Shiro. Originally, he heard a slight movement on the roof, so he came to check it out of curiosity. Who knew that the initiators were Shinji and Dustless? Projection. Wei Gong Shiro, who was holding a steel pipe, rushed over crazily. His speed was quite fast, like a black hurricane coming head-on. He had been strengthening his training recently, hoping that the next time he met Dustless, he could kill his enemy with his own hands. Go to hell. The magically strengthened steel pipe fell from the sky and accurately landed on Dustless's head. Bang! Caw caw caw. Dustless's head was unusually hard, so it was fine after the strike. On the contrary, the steel pipe in Wei Gong Shiro's hand had cracks that could be seen with the naked eye. Gulp. Wei Gong Shiro choked and stared at Dustless with his eyes wide open. Let alone killing him, there was not even a basic wound on the head that was attacked. This guy, is he really not a monster? Wei Gong Shiro was shocked and absent-minded as he muttered to himself. Ignoring Wei Gong Shiro's shocked eyes, Dustless saw the command seal in his hand and secretly said in his heart, this kid has succeeded in summoning Saber without a doubt. It's impossible for you to kill me with this method. Not caring about Wei Gong Shiro's shocked face, Dustless decisively added insult to injury. With your level of training for 1,000 years, you might be able to touch my toes. Even if you're looking down on me, you should know when to stop. The palace guard coldly raised his arm and looked at the command incantation in his hand. His eyes flashed with hesitation as he thought to himself, the command incantation can only be used 3 times. I can't use it all up, or Saber will definitely kill me. Thinking of this, Wei Gongshi smiled bitterly, feeling that the heavens were unfair. Wei Gong Shiro didn't know how he had offended Saber. Although Saber was his servant, Saber completely ignored Wei Gong Shiro's orders. Unless he used a command spell to make her work, Saber would not even look at Wei Gong Shiro. Wei Gong Shiro is also a master. Tong Shenner was overjoyed. His relationship with Wei Gong Shiro was not bad. He immediately suggested loudly, Wei Gong, the 2 of us should join hands to deal with this fellow. This brat is ridiculously strong. Shanair, Wei Shiro's face flashed a touch of hesitation. If he could, he hoped that he could take revenge with his own hands. After all, this was a blood feud for killing his father. If others intervened, everything would change. However, when he looked at Wu Chen's head that was completely fine after being hit by the rod, Wei Gongshi immediately gave up on his childish idea. With his own ability, he was afraid that he would not be Dustless's opponent in this life. No problem, let's join hands now. Shin Air. Come out, Saber. After hesitating for a while, Wei Gongshi finally decided to accept Tong Shinner's proposal. Dustless was too strong. With your level of cultivation, you can touch my toes in 1,000 years. Although this sentence was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. Buzz buzz buzz. In front of Wei Gongshi, there was a sudden flash of light. A blonde girl wearing armor and holding a holy sword rushed out of the light. Even if she had not fully materialized, from the vague outline, it could be seen that this person was Saber. Dustless, we haven't seen each other for 10 years. How are you? The emerald eyes circled around Dustless, and the surprise on Saber's face could not be concealed. 10 years were like a day, and time did not leave a trace on Dustless's cheeks. It gave people the illusion that it was 10 years ago. You two know each other. Wei Gongshi's old face changed dramatically, and he was hit hard. His servant and the enemy who killed his father were acquaintances. Why did such a melodramatic script fall on his head? Could it be? Suddenly thinking of something, Wei Gongshi opened his eyes wide and said in horror, could it be that you, did you only realize it now? But it's all too late. My plan has succeeded. It's too late for you pawns to realize the problem. A gloomy laughter came from Dustless's mouth. He said coldly, as the winner of the last Holy Grail War, I personally created this Holy Grail War. Your so-called servant and master are actually just my props. As for the purpose, it was quite simple. It was nothing more than to resurrect Saber. Saber was very special. Because she did not fall, but signed a contract with the world's consciousness before she died, the world would always stop at the moment before her death. Therefore, she could not be resurrected using the outer path, reincarnation technique. Since he could not use the reincarnation technique, he could only hope that this Holy Grail War would give Saber a new life. In fact, this was also a result of accident. He originally planned to use the reincarnation technique, but after knowing Saber's secret, Dustless had no choice but to have the idea of the Holy Grail. Chapter 1743. Who's your pawn? Tong Shinji's eyes widened. He still wanted to use the power of the Holy Grail to become a real magician, not a dabbler like he was now. How could he give up the Holy Grail? Unless he killed him. Dustless, Saber was slightly touched. After experiencing Wei Gongshi and Lancelot's attack, if it weren't for Dustless's help at the critical moment, Saber's life direction and confidence would be completely lost. You bastard! Wei Gongshi's face turned green. He glared at Dustless fiercely. He was furious. He finally understood why Dustless spared his life that day. Everything was for him to summon Saber. Your cheap father Wei Gongshi thinks he's very smart. Did he really think I didn't know he was still alive? He's as naive as a child who hasn't grown up. Naive to the extreme. Dustless snorted coldly. You let him live for so many years just to find the right time to kill Wei Gongshi in front of Wei Gongshi. As his son, Wei Gongshi will definitely feel that he's very insignificant. Even your father's death couldn't be stopped. You, who realize how insignificant you are, will definitely pursue greater power, servant. Dustless, this guy's IQ is really scary, Saber blushed with shame. Although Dustless's method was very despicable, she didn't have much disgust. Since Wei Gong Keisai could plot against her and Dustless, why couldn't Dustless plot against him and his father? If you do it, I'll do it back. Saber didn't think it was too much. Since you can plot against others, others can also plot against you. An eye for an eye, it was a karma. You bastard, who wants to be your pawn? Are you kidding me? I still want to be a magician. The Holy Grail is an important shortcut for me to become a magician. Tong Shinji roared angrily. He waved his hand and ordered, Rider, work with Saber to get rid of this eyesore bastard. Saber. The palace guard looked at Saber expressionlessly. Saber's body began to go out of control. No one could resist the command of the command curse. You shouldn't have come, Dustless. Saber reluctantly raised Excalibur. Radiance swirled around the blade, and a crisp buzzing sound filled the air. Excalibur, a huge golden light came straight at Dustless. A dazzling slash tore through the sky. That cold slash caused the void to tremble slightly, as if it was begging for mercy. Swish! Swish! At the same time, Rider also nimbly moved to Dustless's left side. His cold eyes swept around. As long as there was a slight opening, he would cooperate and launch a fatal sneak attack. Ha ha ha, Wei Gong, if your Saber and my Rider work together, we'll be invincible. This brat will definitely die this time. The Holy Grail will be ours from now on. Shinji Tong laughed crazily, and his fanatical eyes had already seen the Holy Grail in his hand. Don't be careless. Compared to the deranged Shinji Tamatsuki, Wei Gong Shiro's face was tense. He had heard from Wei Gong Kisi that Dustless had won the Fourth Holy Grail War. Although this guy had crushed the Holy Grail in the end, it was meaningless. He was the victor, and he had destroyed all the heroic spirits by himself. Two ignorant brats with stupid faces. Staring at the light descending from the sky, Dustless calmly raised his right hand. A weak energy ball instantly formed. Wang Su's flash. The moment the energy ball descended, the void surrounding Dustless was instantly distorted. The golden energy ball was like the mouth of a deep-sea whirlpool, constantly shattering the surrounding void. Caw caw caw. The crisp sound of the explosion was extremely pleasant to the ears. Only Wei Gong Shiro could hear it. It was so heavy and oppressive. Crystal-clear beads of sweat kept dripping down his face. This is bad. Wei Gong Shiro was shocked. He felt a fatal sense of oppression. Although he didn't know the specific power of Dustless's move, in terms of scale, this move called Wang Su's Flash had already surpassed Excalibur. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Staring at the huge golden light rushing towards him, Dustless's expression changed. He calmly flicked his finger, and the golden energy ball directly flew towards Saber's attack. Boom boom boom. The two unprecedented moves collided. The entire sky suddenly trembled violently. The energy ripples that spread out shattered all the glass within a radius of several hundred meters. Crack! The thick light tore Saber's attack apart in an invincible manner. It immediately went straight into the depths of the sky, and finally exploded. Didn't I say it before? You are just chess pieces. Although your performance is very outstanding, but, in the end, you are still chess pieces. Staring at the stunned Shinji Tong and Wei Gong Shiro, Dustless was full of disdain. Damn it! Kill him for me, Rider. Seeing that Saber's attack had failed, Shinji Tong immediately ordered Rider to attack. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A blurry black shadow quickly attacked. Its speed was so fast that it was difficult to see it with the naked eye. One could only feel a gust of wind that was filled with ill intent. However, it was impossible to tell what it was. Clang 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 clang. One could also faintly hear a series of crisp roars. It was pleasant to the ear, playing the music of death. It must be the sound of the chain on Ryder's dagger. Chapter 1744. Asking for humiliation, looking up at the sky, Dustless suddenly closed his eyes. Is this guy in despair? Is he going to close his eyes and wait for death? Seeing Dustless closing his eyes, Shinji was overjoyed and almost jumped up exaggeratedly. Humph, want to die? No way. We must torture him ruthlessly. Thinking of the humiliation he suffered, Shinji's face was twisted with revenge. Wei Gong Shirang was silent. His eyes were fixed on Wu Chen's changes. Even the most basic movements and the most minute details were recorded in his mind. Then, he carefully filtered them. Contrary to Shinji's thoughts, Wei Gong Shiro didn't think that Dustless would give up. Buzz buzz buzz, a strange ripple splashed in the void, and then the air became much colder for no reason, as if living in an ice house, shivering uncomfortably. What's the situation? Everyone was stunned, the air became cold for no reason, and it was chilly. Such an abnormal situation, something unexpected must have happened. Wei Gong, look, that guy's eyes are not jealous. Shinji pointed at Dustless with a trembling finger, and there was a deep fear in his words, feeling a lingering fear. That is, Wei Gong Shiro was stunned. He subconsciously looked at Wu Chen's eyes. Wu Chen's scarlet eyes were filled with an ominous omen, like the pupils of the Grim Reaper. When they looked at each other, their bodies involuntarily wanted to bend their knees. Let's deal with you for the time being. The scarlet five-pointed star eyes were strange and unpredictable. These eyes were Dustless's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ryder, who was originally unbelievably fast, suddenly slowed down, and was clearly exposed to Dustless's eyes. This was all thanks to the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. The dynamic capture ability was dozens of times stronger than usual. Dustless focused on Ryder's eyes without blinking, and suddenly there was a fluctuation in his eyes. It was so small that it could be ignored, but it really existed. Tsukimi. After muttering softly, Dustless withdrew his gaze and completely ignored Ryder. What's the situation? Looking down on this uncle's Ryder. How dare you? Seeing this, Tong Shinji grumbled in dissatisfaction, my Ryder is not that weak. It's impossible to be defeated by a glance. Plop. As soon as Shinji's voice fell, Ryder fell to the ground with a plop. He lay on the ground half dead, as if he had fainted and was snoring. What's the situation? Staring at this scene in disbelief, the two old men's faces were filled with pain. He had just finished speaking, and Ryder had been defeated in a single blow. The speed of this last strike was too fast. Tong Shen even suspected that Wu Chen and Ryder were in cahoots with each other. Useless trash. Why am I so unlucky to have this trash as master? Shinji stomped his feet and cursed angrily, venting all the complaints on Ryder. Servant strength is related to master. Shinji, you're a half-baked person yourself, where did you get the confidence to point fingers at others? Dustless's cold eyes fell on Shiro and Shinji, and continued, one servant has been taken care of, now it's your life. Suddenly, Dustless's cold eyes fell on Shinji's head. Ah! Don't kill me, all of this is Shiro's fault, I'm innocent. I was dragged in to deal with you, it was completely forced by this kid. Before Dustless could do anything, Shinji began to gloriously betray his teammate. Ah! Hearing this, Wei Gong Shirlong's heart turned over, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Shinji Tamatsuki with his eyes wide open. He didn't expect this guy to be so shameless. He proposed to join forces to deal with the culprit of Wu Chen. It was obviously Shinji Tamatsuki, but now he betrayed his master for glory. Sure enough, I still have to rely on myself. Alliance and whatnot are all nonsense. Shiro smacked his lips and snorted at Shinji. Saber. Shiro glanced at Saber, and the latter's body suddenly lost control. Restricted by the command curse, Saber had to pounce on Dustless again. Shiro, I'll leave that kid to you. I'm not feeling well, so I'll retreat first. The heavy responsibility of saving the world will be left to you. Shinji ran away without turning his head, even ignoring Ryder. What, you're asking me why I don't care about Ryder's life? Such an incompetent person is not worth my blood. Shinji pushed all the blame onto Ryder's weakness, and didn't think it was his own fault. Shinji, I don't remember saying that you can go. A cold voice suddenly came, and Shinji suddenly shivered. He turned his head and looked at Dustless in fear. Instead of slowing down, he sped up several times. Don't move, Shinji, you can't escape from this guy's palm. Suddenly, he found that Dustless's eyes were locked on Shinji, and his blood-red eyes were filled with ferocity. Shiro wanted to stop it, but it was too late. Amaterasu. Shinji's body suddenly burned with black flames. At first, it was a weak flame, but as Dustless increased the output of chakra, his whole body was devoured by Amaterasu. Chapter 1745. It's burning me. Wei Gong, come and save me. Quick. Bathed in the Amaterasu, Tong Shinji wailed miserably. His heart-wrenching cry contained endless sorrow. The most horrifying thing was that no matter how Tong Shinji tossed his body, the fire could not be extinguished. Instead, because of the violent tossing, the fire became bigger and bigger. I am Sakura's brother. Do you want to see her heartbroken? Tong Shinji could not bear the pain of the burning Amaterasu and took the initiative to beg for mercy. He promised, I swear I will never trouble Sakura again. Swear. Let me think about how many times this is. Dustless was indifferent. He was very tired of people like Tong Shinji who went back on his words. After teaching him a lesson several times, this guy promised to draw a line with Sakura. But Tong Shinji was shameless. Promises were worthless to him. He could break them at any time. Damn, what a heartless guy. Seeing Dustless was like a stone, unmoved. He did not even blink his eyes. He just watched coldly. Wei Gong Shiro took the initiative to put out the fire. Boom boom boom. Wei Gong Shiro took off his clothes and tried to put out the black evil fire. It's so hot. Soon, Wei Gong Shiro realized that he was wrong. This evil fire was different from ordinary fire. Not only did he not put out the fire, but he was almost contaminated. An unextinguishable fire. Wei Gong Shiro was disgusted. He might as well try to imagine an unextinguishable fire burning on his body forever until he completely turned into ashes. Such a ruthless trick, how much resentment did it take? Aren't you afraid that Sakura will be sad? Wei Gong Shiro questioned loudly. Dustless gave him the feeling of a cold ice cube. He only cared about the life and death of his own people. As for the life and death of other people, it was as light as a feather. Sakura, as an outsider, you are not qualified to call her that. And that Tong Shinji is the same. What's the point of living for a scum who even harasses his own sister? Dustless asked calmly, Tamatsuki Shinji is as hypocritical as your father. He talks about benevolence and morality, and wants to be a righteous partner, but his actions are the opposite. The so-called justice was kept in one's heart, but when it came out of one's mouth, the original meaning would change. A naive brat like you has no right to talk about justice. That's right, you are also a hypocrite, Wei Gong Shiro. Back then, Dustless and I helped your father win the Holy Grail, but at the crucial moment, he actually ordered me and Archer to deal with Dustless. Despicable. You might not know this, but Wei Gong Chisi even used his own wife, and even killed her with his own hands. Saber mocked loudly. Although she was under the control of the command spell, she could not control her mouth. Nonsense. Such a kind father would never do such a thing. Wei Gong Shiro roared with a red face. His scarlet eyes were filled with hatred. After all, Wei Gong Qixi was the person Wei Gong Shiro respected the most. Stupid thing, you keep saying that you want to be a righteous partner, but, with a gloomy smile, Dustless said with an evil smile, Wei Gong Shiro, the holy grail you are pursuing is actually the most evil thing in the world. It is all the resentment of humans. In this way, you still dare to say that you are a righteous person. A hypocrite who talks about benevolence and morality, how shameless are you? Saber, tear this guy's mouth apart for me. Wei Gong Shiro, who could not stand Dustless's verbal attack, roared angrily. His red face and thick neck looked very scary. Idiot. Dustless could not help but shake his head. Then, he gently stared at Wei Gong Shiro, and an eye power similar to Tsukimi shot out. Not good. Wei Gong Shiro's heart suddenly thumped. Radire and Tomitsuki Shinji were living examples. They were instantly killed by that strange eye without any warning. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. Damn it, what's going on? In his mind, a strange illusion suddenly appeared. He had never seen it before, and the protagonist of this strange illusion was his father, Wei Gong Shiro. Bakudo number 63, 6 Staff Light Prison. At the same time, huge golden light ribbons attacked from all directions, restraining Saber without leaving a trace. Originally, she had been ordered by Wei Gong Shiro to fight a bloody battle with Dustless until both sides were completely annihilated. Phew. Thank you, Dustless. Looking at the light belt on her body, Saber breathed a sigh of relief. Her body could no longer move. She was completely restricted by 6 Staff Light Prison, and she could no longer continue to swing her sword at Dustless. It's too polite to say thank you, Saber. Dustless shook his head and glanced at Wei Gong Shiro. This guy had already fainted on the ground. He was confused by the ordinary illusion of Sharingan, he was not qualified to taste Tsukimi. Are you willing to be my servant? Saber. If you continue to follow this kid, it may be disadvantageous to you, or even order you to commit suicide. Although this was just a groundless worry, nothing was absolute. There was nothing wrong with guarding against the unexpected. He had spent so much effort to summon Saber and died for nothing for 10 years. It was inevitable that everything would go down the drain. Is this okay? Saber did not refuse and replied frankly, if you can do it, Dustless, I am willing to be your sword. Of course. Dustless nodded and admitted, but the way was a bit awkward, just like Gumu Soichiro and Castor, they signed a contract on their wedding night. Chapter 1746. What way? Saber asked curiously. She had never heard that a person who was not a magic book could become a master before. This, Dustless blushed and was silent for a while. It's strange. You look like a girl. Saber's eyes looked at Dustless as if she had discovered a new world. In her impression, Dustless had always been the decisive type. Girl. Dustless's face darkened when he heard that. He immediately gritted his teeth and told her how to sign the contract. Sure enough, as Dustless imagined, Saber's ears suddenly turned red, and her whole person was as shy as if she had been painted. This way. Who told you? After a long silence, Saber finally asked helplessly. She didn't expect that they would need to sign the contract with each other in such a way. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? This is what Ling told me. Dustless said bluntly. The actual source was Gumu Soichiro and Castor. After all, the two of them signed the contract in this way. And this kind of thing, Dustless also asked Ling during the period, and the answer given to Dustless was yes. If that's the case, Saber took a deep breath and carefully looked at Wu Qin, who was close at hand. Her heart was filled with emotions. As the king of ancient Britain, Saber had already cut off the love between men and women. She didn't like Dustless, and at the same time, she didn't know what love was. She just had a good impression of Dustless, and she didn't hate Dustless. If she had to make a choice, then Saber would decisively choose Dustless. Feelings were secondary, but there was also the reason of the Holy Grail. Although Dustless was not a qualified master, Wei Gong Shiro was also not a qualified master. After all, Saber's strength had been greatly weakened by following Wei Mia Shiro. The biggest problem was that Wei Mia was unable to provide Saber with enough mana. It was extremely disadvantageous for her to face the other servants. Of course, this was also the case for Dustless. He was even worse than Wei Gong Shiro, as he did not have any magic power. However, Dustless's soul was so huge that it could be used as a foundation to provide Saber with unlimited magic power. Dustless, I've decided to be your servant. After some hesitation, Saber decisively jumped ship. In fact, when Saber found out that Wei Gong Shiro's father was Wei Gong Keisai, she was filled with disgust towards him. You made the right choice, Saber. A warm smile appeared on Wu Chen's face. You want to abandon me? Stop dreaming. It was also at this moment that Wei Gongshi's voice suddenly sounded. Unlike before, there was a trace of indescribable madness in his voice. It gave people the impression that he was a dog that would jump over a wall in desperation. Yo, boy, your consciousness is very tenacious. Dustless waved his hand and said to Wei Gong Shiro, it's really amazing, I'm a little bit impressed by you, an ordinary human being who was hit by Sharingan's Genjutsu and still retained his consciousness. TSK, you should be proud of yourself. Taking a closer look, Wei Gong Shirang was looking at Wu Chen ferociously. His palm had been pierced by a dagger. This guy is quite decisive. Saber narrowed her eyes and praised, using pain to determine the outcome of the Genjutsu. Very smart, this boy can persist until now, his willpower is very strong. Of course, my dreams and beliefs are still very far away, how can I be defeated by Genjutsu? Wei Gong Shiro said with a smile of exultation. But it's a pity. Dustless shook his head. His tone suddenly became low and cold as he said, the so-called dreams and beliefs are things that only the strong can talk about. You're going to die soon, and you're still talking to me about beliefs and dreams. You're too naive, kid. Hee hee. I know that I will be killed. But... Wei Gong Shiro's face showed a smile of hatred, and said fiercely, you killed my father, it seems that I can't take revenge. But I will make you suffer 100 times more. You seem to care about Saber a lot, right? Is this guy going to? Dustless's pupils shrank, and a cruel look flashed in his eyes. He already understood what Wei Gong Shiro wanted to do. Saber, I now order you to kill yourself with command seal. Wei Gong Shiro could only think of an extreme way to take revenge on Dustless, since he was going to be killed anyway. It was not bad to drag a girl to the grave with him, especially Saber. He could also make Dustless suffer, killing two birds with one stone. You bastard, are you so vicious? Saber was shocked. She didn't expect that Wei Gong Shiro would order her to kill herself at all costs in order to take revenge on Dustless. At the same time, Saber's body suddenly began to lose control. She couldn't resist the command seal's order, and the tip of Excalibur was pointed at her neck. Chapter 1747. Saber's heart skipped a beat. She didn't expect that in order to take revenge on Dustless, Wei Gong Shiro would order her to commit suicide at all costs. At the same time, Saber's body began to go out of control. She couldn't resist the command of the command seal, and the tip of Excalibur was already pointed at her neck. Ha ha ha, Wei Gong Shiro laughed crazily and shouted crazily, "What do you think? Although I can't beat you, I can order Saber to take revenge on you, so you can't do anything about it." Ha 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 ha. Wei Gong Shiro laughed sinisterly. He had been driven crazy, and this was all thanks to Dustless, which caused his temperament to change greatly. "You mean I can't do anything about it?" Wu Chen murmured softly. His indifferent eyes were as calm as an ancient well. Not to mention nervousness, which he had never felt before, there wasn't even a slight ripple in his eyes. Ordering Saber to commit suicide. Is this your trump card, Mayamiya Shiro? What a boring ending that doesn't interest me. Dustless looked up to the sky and sighed. He expected Wei Gong Shiro to perform some shocking script, but he didn't expect it to be so boring. He just ordered Saber to commit suicide. It sounded like a headache, but the actual solution was extremely simple, especially for Dustless. It was as simple as eating and drinking. Buzz. There were bursts of energy fluctuations in the air, and then Dustless stared at Wei Gong Shiro, and the Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan focused on Wei Gong Shiro's pupils. "That last command incantation of yours. Lend it to me for a while." "Lend it to you? Is there something wrong with your head? How can I lend such a precious thing to you, not to mention that you are my enemy?" Wei Gong Shiro sneered. "It's funny, after all, this is the last time of your life. I will allow you to do whatever you want." Through Wei Gong Shiro's eyes, a more majestic eye power than before invaded the depths of his mind. This guy's eyes, which were full of hatred, suddenly became uncontrollable, and he called out respectfully. "Dustless Sama. It's funny, you dare to talk nonsense with this kind of trick, it's ridiculous." Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He just needed to use the irresistible eye power to control Wei Gong Shiro. "Dustless Sama. What's going on?" Saber stared at Wei Gong Shiro with a surprised face. A second ago, Wei Gong Shiro wanted to die with Dustless, but now he suddenly called Dustless Sama Sama. It was really unbelievable. "Release order, Dustless's eye powers, Dustless's eye powers eye power, Dustless as eye power power." Wei Gong Shiro, release command commands command. S of S. S. Wei. After that, Saber was surprised to find that her body was very relaxed, and the command that she couldn't resist had suddenly disappeared. She also understood that this was Dustless's doing. What a mysterious and terrifying man. "I didn't expect you to be able to do this kind of thing. In the two Holy Grail Wars, you're probably the biggest cheater, Dustless." Saber's face was full of admiration. Dustless could be said to be an ultimate existence. There seemed to be nothing he couldn't do. He was an omniscient and omnipotent character. The biggest cheater. Maybe, after all, this Holy Grail was personally created by me. There's nothing wrong with cheating, it's just my privilege. Dustless shrugged. He didn't think much of it. In the original work, Yen Feng Qili was the one with the biggest privilege. Everyone else only had one, but this guy had two, and he also had a lot of command incantations. It's time to get rid of this kid. He walked up to Wei Gong Shiro and coldly raised his blade. It was best to kill this kind of scourge. By the way, before that, take out your scabbard. Looking at Saber, Dustless explained. Wei Gong Shiro implanted Avalon into Wei Gong Shiro's body. Is that so? No wonder, it's not a coincidence that I can be summoned. Saber nodded, and immediately went to Wei Gong Shiro's side, and her hand went deep into his body. After a while, a shiny object with a mysterious halo appeared in Saber's hand. It was as dazzling as gold, stroking the texture of the vicissitudes of life. Saber's face was full of joy, and she was a little excited. What should we do with Wei Gong Shiro? Kill him. Saber's face was hot. She had promised to sign a contract with Dustless, and the way was naturally imitating the shameless way of Gumu, Soichiro and Castor, through the way of her first night. Anyway, it's a sea of fire to keep him alive, just kill him. Dustless slowly nodded, and immediately waved his sword without hesitation. Puchi. With a crisp sound, Dustless cut off Wei Gong Shiro's head. Mr. Coyote followed in the footsteps of his father, Wei Gong Shiro, and followed him to the underworld. This time, let's see how you're going to heal the wound. If you have the guts, you can play with me again. His eyes were dead, there was no emotion that a human should have. Glancing at the beheaded Wei Gong Shiro, Dustless took Saber's little hand and slowly left. After the fall of Master, Sarvant would not disappear for the time being, but when the stored magic in the body was exhausted, Saber would inevitably disappear. Dustless's task now was to sign a contract with Saber. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.